It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We have an amazing panel here. Brianna Wu, Phil Libin, Larry Magid. We have so much to talk about. Of course, Apple's September 12th event, whether the new iPhone is worth something north of $1,000, the new CEO at Uber, and how to run for Congress without lying. It's all coming up next on Twit.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Twit This Week in Tech, episode 630, recorded Sunday, September 3rd, 2017. Moving at the speed of paper. This Week in Tech is brought to you by, literally, Sonic, Twit's 10 gigabit fiber internet service provider. Join Sonic's internet revolution as they bring fast, affordable internet, phone, and TV to homes and businesses all over California. Visit sonic.com/twit to sign up for service and receive your first month free. And by Stamps.com. Start using your time more effectively with Stamps.com. Use Stamps.com to buy and print real U.S. postage the instant you need it, right from your desk. For our special offer, go to Stamps.com, click the microphone, and enter Twit. And by WordPress. Your customers want to find you. Build a WordPress.com website and help them connect with your business. Get 15% off any new plan purchase at WordPress.com/twit. And by Casper, an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the price, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep. Get $50 off any mattress purchase by visiting Casper.com/twit and entering the promo code TWIT. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. I like to get together a diverse group, an interesting group of people, tech journalists, entrepreneurs, candidates for Congress. Every week we talk about stuff. Brianna Wu's back. It's great to have her. She is both an entrepreneur, a founder of a Giant Space Cat, which is, of course, an online, it's a gaming company, but running for Congress in the Massachusetts, I always get this wrong. Which district?
It's District 8, so it's like an L from South Station over.
Brianna Wu, 2018.com, and she's told us she also has 2022. Yep. 2020.
Got to run for re-election.
Yeah. You know, in fact, that's one of the problems. As soon as you get in to Congress, you're going to spend the rest of your time running to get in again.
Yeah, it's, the philosophy I'm going to have is I'm going to go there and I'm going to do the best job I can for, the people I'm representing. And I'm just going to, go for broke. And, if I get reelected, I will. But I'm not going to go there and play this game where, you think 3 times about everything you do if it's going to help you get reelected. I just, I don't think you can do that with integrity.
You're recording this, right, Leo?
Yes.
Okay. That's
the journalist, Larry Magid from CBS News Radio.
We're going to hold you to that, Brianna.
No, I mean it. I absolutely mean it. Yeah.
And with us, the entrepreneur, the founder, the guy who put together Evernote, Phil Libin. It's always great to see you. His new company, All Turtles, is an not incubator. What do you call it?
We're a studio.
Studio.
We're an AI studio.
For artificial intelligence applications.
Yep.
Coolio. And you may not recognize Phil because he used to look like Mitch Miller with a black goatee and a few extra pounds. You look you look like lost 20 years. You look great.
Thank you. You look great too.
Yeah. He's a good suck up. So, yeah. No, I lost a little weight. I did because I'm doing what you did, which is fasting, intermittent fasting. And
you're fasting?
Intermittent fasting.
I just cut
not
back
all
on
the
carbs.
time. Just, you know what? I tell people I'm skipping meals.
All fasting is intermittent.
I'm skipping carbs.
Unless you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's official, and I want to poll the panel. Apple sent out invitations this week.
Yep.
Uncharacteristically early. Usually they wait till exactly a week before the event, but they announced on end of August that they would have an event September 12th, 10 a.m. There's Jim Dalrymple's post. Of course, Jim from The Loop was invited. There's his invite, and if you read the invite, it says, what does it say? Let's meet at our place. And I think that's even the bigger story. And the only reason I want to go to this one, it's not the 10th anniversary iPhone. It's going to be the first event at the new Apple Park in the new Steve Jobs Theater. And we were speculating whether they'd be ready in time. Pretty exciting.
Yep. It's a spaceship. It's going to this amazing structure.
And in fact, if you look at the Steve Jobs Theater is separate, but it's kind of echoes. It's a circle of glass with the world's largest carbon fiber roof on top of it. But the event is actually, it's almost like an evil genius lab underground. So you go in this big circle, and then there's 2 escalators there, and then you go down into the Steve Jobs Theater, 1,000-seat theater. Presumably, this is where Apple will.
Which is actually a smaller venue than they often use when they would have
Bill
it in
Graham
the screening.
Auditorium is about 50% bigger.
Yeah, so-
but I think 1,000's enough. Remember, they want to have room not only for the press but for Apple employees.
Sure, because there's always a lot of applause. Press typically don't applaud.
So you've been to every Apple event?
Almost every one since 1984 or something. 3.
Do you sit on your hands during these things?
I don't applaud. No, is that what you mean? Do I applaud? Yeah, no. Press are not.
You don't have to sit on your hands. You just don't applaud.
I
would have to sit on my hands.
I don't know. I don't know where the tradition began, but press.
You applaud.
Yeah.
Well, you're not a
press.
journalist. You're not press.
No.
So in a way, that's kind of freedom. I have to admit, I think, and I don't remember, but I'm guessing that in the original iPhone announcement 10 years ago, which was held at the big Moscone West.
Yeah, I was at CES.
I would guess that I leapt to my feet when he announced it.
Because you were excited.
It was pretty exciting.
Why wouldn't you applaud as press? Though?
Because it's like you're taking a side. It's you're endorsing the person speaking as opposed to being there and being objective.
You think that's
I
widely
think
that's widely known?
No. It's just a tradition. Press don't.
No,
I mean,
would
wait.
never
There
applaud
are
at these
exceptions.
events.
Sometimes you will applaud to be polite, not so much for an announcement. Like when Steve Jobs came on after
And he
being
was
sick,
deathly ill. I applauded.
I applauded then, of course.
And everybody in the
because-
theater rose to their feet to
because you're
welcome him.
so there's certain times you would applaud, but you wouldn't applaud an announcement because that would be, I don't know. I'm not sure where the tradition started.
No, it's because you're objective. You should not applaud. You're there to take notes.
Right.
You're not there to cheer.
Right.
But not applauding is not being objective either, right? Because then you're visibly...
No, you're not making any reaction at all. You're just simply taking notes, getting the
Well,
information.
fine. So you're not throwing tomatoes either, but...
No, you're not.
Well, there's an interesting point there because, in fact, you are attending an Apple event.
Yeah, and you're
Right.
signaling like that you're not happy
You're
about
interested
it.
in it.
No,
well,
but-
you could be there.
But when the camera like pans across the audience and there's a bunch of people not applauding, no one is like, oh, that's the press section. They're like,
Prior
those
to
people don't like it.
I think Steve started this tradition probably in 1984 when they made a big to-do about the release of the Macintosh. Remember, he was in his bow tie,
Yeah, I remember
pulled the
that.
Mac out of the bag. It said, hello, it's good to be out of this bag. Ever after, I think Apple, primarily because Steve Jobs was a brilliant showman.
Yep.
Apple made a lot of this. But prior to that, I don't think companies they would be at Comdex. Bill Gates would give a keynote. They might mention new products, but they did not. This whole idea of a dog and pony circus started with Apple, didn't it?
Started with Steve, yeah. And I remember I was at that event in 1984, showing my age here. And most of his, I remember the Next event, when Next Computing, when he introduced the Next, and he just had this amazing way. Here's what I will say. Almost every time I'd walk out of a Steve Jobs keynote, I would walk out saying, I've got to have that product.
Yes.
I can't wait to get my hands on that product. Often I was disappointed. Often the product was not that great.
The reality distortion
Right.
field. And it
oh
was
my God.
very real.
It was very effective. And so when they would interview me immediately afterwards, because typically what I will do at these things, they'll do a radio or television interview immediately afterwards, I am always enthused because I just heard this amazingly enthusiastic speech.
Yeah.
And I have to work very hard at trying not to sound enthused because Steve had that ability to get people to, and I that's not true anymore. I mean, Tim Cook's a great guy.
He's not
but
exactly
he's not
a leap to your feet and
No,
cheer kind of guy.
not at all.
Yeah.
You like him.
Yeah. Very
I met-
likable.
I met Steve Jobs for 5 minutes once at one of the events, and he pretended to know who I was, and it was like the greatest moment of my life.
Surprised you didn't
I know
pretend you
he didn't really know who I was, but like
I have a far worse Steve Jobs story, but I'll let Brianna.
I've only had
poor
one.
Brianna. We should mention that we are in studio, the three guys, and poor Brianna has to sit here on Skype, which is putting you at a disadvantage, and I apologize. So please don't hesitate to step all over us, and I will stop.
All
everybody.
right. Yeah. No, I'm super excited about this. This one. Like, I think the prototypes have come out for the iPhone. I guess we're going to call it the 8. I think we're going to bet
Really?
it's called
Is that
the 8.
what everybody's saying?
It's calling the everybody says the 8.
Yeah. Yeah,
Who knows?
the
8 is great.
prototypes just look amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical about getting rid of the home button, and the reason is this is terrible. But I measure what normal people are going to think about new technology by watching my husband. He's a brilliant guy. He has a PhD in bacterial genetics. He's head of IP for a major biotech company.
But he's
he
normal.
Can't figure out tech at all. He cannot figure out tech at all.
Yeah.
Cannot update his iPhone, and I just you read about some of the things they found in the beta for swiping up to get to the home screen, and even the supposed feature about scanning your face with like a Kinect technology to unlock it. I'm really skeptical about how normal people are going to react to that. I mean, we're not going to have any problems, but you're getting rid of the major interface paradigm of the iPhone.
But
And,
to be fair,
yeah.
most Android phones don't have home buttons.
Not
They have
physical ones. They may
have
Samsung,
virtual.
Samsung
Very true.
has. And so
Very
it's not
true.
undoable, but
Sure.
does feel a little bit like getting rid of the headphone jack.
It's gonna-
a little more courage.
Apple hates holes. Apple hates buttons. Like, this has been clear for
No.
years.
Yeah.
It's all moving in the same
Steve
direction.
insisted a mouse should only have one button, despite every bit of evidence otherwise.
Yeah. It's going to be great.
Steve also didn't like on-off switches too.
Right.
Yeah.
He just wanted to work.
Yep.
Me neither.
But losing the home button also means you lose Touch ID, the fingerprint sensor on an
Yeah.
iPhone.
Right.
And this-
Although you could do this, what Google does is it puts that in the back. I mean,
they're not going to do that.
See, it's right there.
They're not.
Yeah.
And
They're
it's
not. I love it in my Nexus. It looks
Yeah. It's
great.
very
It's very
natural.
functional.
Yeah.
So it's much better. I
What-
actually like it on the back.
The only negative
What
is
I worry
if it's
about
on
with
on
the
table,
iPhone-
you have to pick
Right.
it up.
Or when I drive, I Velcro it to the dashboard
so
of
you
the car.
can't reach the
And I can't reach the
fingerprint.
back. Yeah, that's the problem.
What are you worried about, Brianna?
So, if it's in the dark, they're going to change over the secure enclave chip to, supposedly work with the front-facing camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I just worry about how awkward that's going to be. Like, if you're in a meeting, you can kind of do it under the table and,
Here's my guess.
hide it like that. Yeah.
And this is based on rumor. Of course, we won't know really anything for sure until the 12th. But the rumor is that this face recognition will work at any angle. So it's my guess that Apple wouldn't do this unless the face recognition was so good that it basically knows you're there.
Yeah.
So if it's under the table, it still sees you. If it's on the table, if you can see the phone, it can see you, right? And if the facial recognition is fast, it will unlock the minute it sees you. So my guess is that that's how this will work.
I turned it off on this laptop. This is a laptop, Windows
But that's-
Hello. It's
hello.
so bad, I just turned it off. It's
Well,
much faster to type in my
There's also
PIN.
a question of how long before somebody cracks it.
We mean with a photograph or something?
Yeah, I mean, the Samsung Galaxy S8 face recognition was defeated by the Chaos Computer Club. They showed how you could take a picture of somebody with a telephoto, and what they did, which was interesting, is they projected the picture onto a curved piece of paper to give it the Z axis, to give it three-dimensionality, and that fooled the S8.
Why
and
can't it
unlocked
look for a blink or some kind of movement?
Sometimes
that
that
photograph
happens.
would not likely
But don't
do.
you think Apple would not abandon the Touch ID, which, by the way, it's not merely unlocking the phone. Their Apple Pay relies on this for security.
Yeah.
Their secure enclave needs to be unlocked by this. This is a big deal to the point where if you get a third party to fix your iPhone and they immediately disable the Touch ID because they say, well, we can't be sure it's still secure. So I don't think they replace this unless they have something that they feel very confident is as fast, if not faster. And for that reason, I'm confident that it will recognize you. As soon as you can see the phone, it will see you. And
But then what about that issue if it's dark? I mean,
it will have infrared.
It's got IR.
It'll
Or, it'll have. We know that, actually. We think we know that.
Theoretically possible that it could still do Touch ID at some point through the screen.
Yeah, the rumor was Apple was
Or the camera.
trying to get that to work and never did get it to work effectively. It's if you think about it, very difficult.
Why couldn't the
thing to do.
camera do it?
It's
Do Touch ID.
theoretically possible they could still have something like that, but I think, I doubt they would release it unless it's actually a pretty good experience.
Here's Apple's bet is you will like face recognition so much. It will be so good and so convenient that you will never again say, where's the fingerprint reader? And it will make every other phone, including apparently their 7S and their 7S Plus, obsolete immediately.
Yeah.
That's I'm
And so
guaranteeing
you're going to spend $1,200 or whatever the thing's going to cost.
Well,
or
yeah.
Fingerprint
$1,000.
readers have been around.
it also makes a lot of sense with ARKit. I was really amazed with how little press this got coming out of the State of Union at WWDC this year. You know, if Apple, like, so we're going to talk about it later in the show, but they have some really, really fascinating ARKit demonstrations, like things like virtual tape measures you can just move around. So like Apple's iPhone having infrared built into it to specifically sense depth, that makes a lot of sense with, ARKit, because that's the problem. You could see it in the demo, and the little Lego Batman mobile would stutter a little bit because it couldn't quite detect the depth as fast as it was moving. So it makes sense as like a bigger move with Apple. And I agree with you that I don't think they would bring it to their flagship product if it didn't work. I just, it's one of these things where we need to see it to evaluate it before we really believe in it.
Well, Phil, you were saying fingerprint has been around for a long time. It's
been
a
around,
well-known.
It's been around since the 90s, and it always sucked until it came out on whatever, the iPhone 7
It's a good point,
or
Touch
something.
ID. And then everybody followed. I mean, it's very good now on everything.
Face recognition has been around since the 90s, and it's always sucked. I had it on a ThinkPad back when that was still IBM, and it was terrible. And if Apple releases it, it's going to be the first time that it's going to be good, and then it'll be good everywhere.
Gee, that was always the kind of the story about Apple. You think that story's still true?
Yeah.
That they're still going to be, if they do it, it'll be great.
I think on like a mainstream product. It doesn't mean that they won't release like other products that may still not be great.
You don't miss your headphone jack?
No.
I do.
Really?
I have a headphone.
I hear from a lot of people who miss it. I am not convinced that was a good idea. Apple sold more iPhone 7s than any other iPhone in history.
The AirPods are pretty great as headphones.
Yeah, but they're $159. They're hard to get.
You can lose them.
And it's not a substitute for a wired headphone.
The AirPods are going to seem like a bargain when you wind up paying $1,200 for the phone.
Will it be that expensive? Can it be that expensive?
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm not saying they won't do it, but it just seems crazy right now.
It wouldn't be a bad thing to have to give themselves the freedom to have a really high priced item that's not high priced because of its gold or ceramic or something stupid, but actually high priced components.
That's what I've been saying. That's why they keep the iPhone 7. That's why they do the 7S. Yeah. And that's what I've been saying Apple should do is say, look, price isn't even a consideration. We're just going to make the best phone we can make. And we'll charge you a fair price for it based on what it costs.
It's the Tesla strategy.
Yeah.
Right? It's a Tesla master plan.
Well, it was actually the Mac strategy. That's what Steve Jobs said when the Mac came out. People criticized. In fact, wasn't it Wozniak or somebody? No, it was Jeff Raskin, who the late Jeff Raskin criticized.
He wanted to make the Mac was
cheaper
originally his idea. It was a people's computer.
And I remember Jobs saying, "Look, we have BMWs and Mercedes, and then we got Pintos and Novas, and there's different market segments. He wanted to be in the BMW business."
I actually think this is different. This is Tesla. Like Mercedes is a luxury brand.
Yeah.
The Tesla explicit world domination plan is you're going to make something expensive because that's how you get the freedom to put in the technology that you want, and then you're relentlessly going to make new products using those technologies that drive the price down and increase the experience. Right. So the Model 3 is probably a better car than the Model S at 1/3 the price.
Speaking of that, so I have to say this. I went to my Tesla dealer the other day to ask when my Model 3 was going to be ready. Mm-hmm. He didn't know. And he tried to sell me a Model S.
Yeah.
Really?
He really was pushing it. And I'm thinking, wow, first of all, why are you pushing it?
I'm thinking, why are you talking to a Tesla dealer? The whole point is you don't have to ever interact with humans.
I was curious. There's one in my neighborhood. I was curious if he knew when my Model 3 would be ready.
That's your
mistake.
Anyway,
the point was he did this hard sell and then said, if you lease it, it's actually going to be cheaper to lease the Model S than the Model 3. And he did this whole hard sell.
I would just ignore anything coming out of a car dealer person.
Well no. I want the Model. I'd rather have a Model 3 than a Model S. I know that sounds weird because the Model S is going to be higher luxury.
Yeah.
But there'll be something cool about being one of the first people to have a Model 3.
The gold Apple Watch was stupid luxury. That was expensive because
ridiculous,
it was gold. That was dumb.
Yeah.
If they come out with a new phone
I
that's
have the ceramic Apple Watch, which is
slightly less dumb, still dumb.
Thank you very much.
He's on the show.
No, I wanted it because I wanted the ceramic, but you're right, it's $1,200. This is the current edition.
But if the iPhone 8 is really $1,000 or $1,200, not because of fancy materials, but because that's the Model S. That's the first version that's expensive, so they can try new technology. Yeah. So that a year later it becomes $600. That's great.
Right.
It's a virtuous thing to do.
I do think that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you how much your husband would pay.
My husband would pay nothing. He keeps the same phone until he drops it or breaks it or it runs out of
he's
space
not the
and he
market.
needs a new one.
Yeah.
He's not. He's Frank takes out the garbage and I take care of our tech needs. We have a
So how much would you
separation.
pay?
I'm going to get the best model.
too.
Something for me is
Bingo.
I have the 7 Plus, and I use it as my main campaign device, and it spends so much time resting on my finger, this pinky finger down there, that you do end up getting like hand cramps from using it that much. So if it's a fraction of an ounce lighter, that's something that's really going to increase usability for me. I was also really interested in the jet black iPhone. It didn't bother me that it scratched a bit because I think that's the life of a phone. I really love that material and the shine. So I personally don't have a problem paying more for it, but it's hard to not have a bit of a cynical attitude about it because Apple's best quarter really hasn't been repeated since, they released the iPhone in China and really had that just explosion in sales. And I think they've, got to find a place where they can get a lot of profitability again.
In almost every product line, there is this law of this marginal return. So I'm a bicycle guy. And I know that I haven't bought a bike lately. Now I think they cost $10,000 for the really good bikes. But the last time I bought a bike, you could buy a crappy bike for $200, a decent bike for $500, a good bike for $1,000, and then at about $1,500 you could buy a really good bike. Still not a great bike. And so I went towards, I think I spent $1,500 and back. That's probably about a $3,000 bike today. But my point is that it's what you get for that is marginally better than what you get for the one that's quite a bit less expensive. And that's true with cameras, it's true with cars, almost every product line.
Yeah.
But I could easily see why somebody like Brianna, who is using that iPhone, it's her lifeline. When you think about what
20
you're
or
getting out of it.
30% more for it over a period of 2 years is worth it.
For something that you're using many hours a day.
Let's not forget, you spend more than that over a year on cell phone connectivity.
Much more.
That's $1,000 a year easy.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet I think it has something to do with size too. If you spend $2,000 on a desktop computer, that doesn't feel outrageous.
Yeah.
But you spend $2,000 on something this small, it's like, what? That seems a little expensive. But it isn't if you think about it. I don't think. I agree with you, Brianna. I got the jet black, and I'm a sucker. I feel a little bit like a sucker though.
The iPhone is the product that I use most. Period.
It is
right?
your number
in
one
life.
computer.
It's
Absolutely.
not just computer. It's
everything.
The thing I use more than anything else.
That's true.
Period.
In a way, that's what we're seeing is the realization among consumers that this is the most important tech product you're going to buy, and maybe product in
But
general.
it's also true.
So it's worth $1,200. How much more could it be? Could it be $1,500?
Here's a different way of thinking about it. What if it was $5,000, but it was
too much?
Well, but it is too much. But what if it was $5,000? But it was the kind of product where somebody who wanted to pay $5,000 would be like amazingly happy to have, right? Rather than and then they can work down that same functionality and they could work it in subsequent months and subsequent years into more accessible products. It's not going to be $5,000. It's probably going to be $1,000 or $1,200. But this idea that let's make something that lets us innovate, that actually is at a price point where we can work on technology, and the people who are happy to pay it. Right. I think that's great. The cell phone industry has been kind of in a rut with hardware. There's been only incremental improvements. I think it would really help the entire industry if Apple were to take a pretty big jump, say this is $1,000, this is $1,200. A lot of people are going to complain. That's fine. That's not the only phone they have. But actually make a product that people who can't afford to pay it are happy to do it, and then have everyone benefit in the subsequent year.
And the other thing is that all of these Chinese Android makers are going to look at whatever it is, and they're going to do their best to get something that's as close as possible in quality at a price that people can't afford, because that's their market.
And I think this is the Tesla strategy. I think the world is much improved because Elon came out with the Model S.
Right.
The world is better because the Model S came out.
Well, if it weren't for Leo and others spending a lot of money on Model S's and Model X's, he wouldn't be buying making a car that I can afford.
Yeah,
that was Elon's explicit strategy.
Yeah, explicit, never exactly. And I think that's a thing to be proud of. That it's like a good strategy.
Yep.
So what is Yeah, I mean, remembering, of course, there are many, many people for whom a $500 phone is too expensive.
Yeah.
I talk to people all the time when I say, I want a $200 smartphone, and you can actually get a very good Motorola G or E.
Absolutely.
Well, there's plenty of free smartphones, right?
Or even free. You get an iPhone for free if you sign up for 2 years.
But unsubsidized, you can buy a pretty decent Android phone today for $200, and they're going to work just fine.
So this is already acknowledging that this is for a different kind of person, somebody for whom, A, they have enough money to do this, and B, technology is so important in their lives that they're willing to spend a significant amount of money for it.
And for professional tools, like, these microphones are not the cheapest microphones you could have bought.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and
it's
important.
It'd actually be foolish for me to choose the microphone based on price.
Right.
Because it's something we're going to use for years. It's kind of a big part of the overall product.
Right.
Yeah, so, you're right. And people buy Adobe Photoshop for $800. It's just bits, but because they use it, this is what...
There's also the prestige factor for some people, being among the first to have the coolest iPhone. People pay attention
what is the most Apple could read? I think, remembering, by the way, that there's a starting price, which is the price they'll quote, but that will be for the 64 gig or the lowest memory. I guess the rumor is it'll be 64, 256, and 512, something like that. You could presume that they're going to be for $400 more than the starting price would be the top of the line, which some of you people will buy.
I mean, I pay top of the line MacBook. I forget exactly which one I have, but I think I probably spent about $3K on it. I kind of got the loaded up MacBook. Yeah. I call them a friend of mine and I have this thing, we call it the hot dog version. It's one with everything. So when the new MacBook came out,
all of that,
I got the hot dog edition, one with everything, about $3,000. I used my MacBook 3 or 4 times a week. I use my iPhone 30 times a day. I'd pay as much for a really great iPhone as I would for a MacBook.
Yeah.
I would. Like, if there was a product that they would sell me,
a lot of money.
Like, I would pay it. Now, it would have to be worth it.
It would have to have holographic
I do think a
projections.
difference is...
I don't know what it would have to have. But if they came out with something, I would pay that much.
I think a difference is your MacBook. Like, I'm the exact same way. Like, I spent for my 2012 MacBook, I bought top of the line, $3,500. Don't regret it at all. It's been a great video machine. I've done 3D work on it. I've done Unreal. It's amazing. But the difference is, if that MacBook gets a little scratched up on the outside, it doesn't affect its use. I don't think I'm the only person that can't go like more than a year tops without getting a scratch in, my phone screen. Yeah. So I think that that's a really big difference. So if they charge that much more, I don't have a problem with it. And I've definitely, this last time I tried getting the version with the most, storage possible, and I really, really enjoyed that freedom, and I'm going to do it again. But I think the difference is if you really use an iPhone day to day, I don't think they can last like more than a year or 2 tops before they get damaged.
So you have to figure that out.
But I want to put it. That's right. So I have a lot of Apple products. I've got an iPhone. I've got a MacBook Air. But at the moment, I have with me, and these are the things I carry all the time, my Android phone and my Hewlett-Packard laptop, because I really like them.
These new
Hewlett-Packard
laptops, it's a new company.
And try doing this to your MacPack. Try doing that.
I agree with
Don't do that at home, kids.
For those of you listening, he just bent this. It's a 2-in-1. He bent the screen all the way around.
But or try using your. But I mean, my point is that Apple. Now, 2 years ago, I wouldn't be caught dead with a Windows laptop because they were pretty crappy. There were no good ones. Now there are phenomenal.
But
ones.
if Apple says $1,200 starting price, there will be a howl of rage. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
there'll be a howl
it's
of rage
a private company. It's not a tax increase.
No, they can do whatever they want. Obviously, they could charge $2,000. But remember what people said with the gold Apple Watch.
There'll be a howl of rage for people who can't buy it.
Oh, the gold Apple Watch.
Can't get it in time.
You know what I loved about the gold Apple Watch? As a radio guy, I could go on the radio and say, "Can you imagine some people are going to spend how much was it?
$17,000.
$17,000 on a piece of technology that's going to be obsolete within a year." I mean, it was so great to make fun of it. Because it was just so absurd. But
what you do have to ask yourself, what kind of company would make a product like that? That a technology company, obviously a Swiss watchmaker would.
Sure. Well, they wouldn't be obsolete in a year.
The gold Apple Watch was, for me, like the weirdest misstep. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. How many did they sell?
I don't know. Probably a lot, but I don't. It's the only Apple product in recent memory where I just like.
Well, if I saw somebody wearing one, I would have. My impression of them would have gone down because why would you? Not because they bought an expensive watch. If they had a Rolex that cost $20,000, fine, because that's going to be a lifetime investment. But why would you invest $18,000 on something that...
I know some people that wear the gold Apple Watch, and I kind of giggle when I see it.
You know what's different though? If you could buy an iPhone that did everything this new imaginary God phone could do for $20, as you can with a watch, by the way, you can buy a Timex.
It works just great.
And it works just fine.
Yeah.
So that would be a big deal then. Then you'd say Apple's charging a premium because of the brand, because of the name, because of styling, not because of product. But this is technological, and it remains to be seen, but presumably technologically going to be an advance. It's hard to imagine what kind of advance you could do in this era of peak smartphone that would be that much better, though. Maybe is it a camera? Is it augmented reality? Is it? I mean, is it going to be that much better? And there'll be plenty of people very happily buy an iPhone 7S.
And by the way, that was, I think, very true with the last several iPhones. I mean, when I looked at the iPhone 7, I said, okay, this is nice.
It's very incremental.
It'll
6 to 6S to 7.
It'll take Samsung 2 weeks to catch up. I mean, nothing blew me away.
Well, look at what Samsung. They went from the S8 to the Note 8 with tiny differences and $100 price.
Although the Note is actually not necessarily an upgrade. It's a different type
it's got a pen,
phone.
it's got different cameras, it's got a little bit bigger as well. 6.3.
Doesn't explode as often.
Doesn't explode as often.
That's true.
I think what people really want to see from Apple is a battery that will charge faster. I think it's so interesting what Anker is doing with their battery products. I bought a host of them lately, and you can plug your iPhone into their official. They've got some name for it, IQ3 or whatever, but it does charge much faster because they've figured out that the charging they can't change batteries because you can't cram more electrons in there, but they can make it charge faster. I think that's the biggest pain point that everyone has right now. Like the screen is solid, it's fast enough, the camera is amazing. I love the depth, for my iPhone 7 Plus. I think that's amazing. What I want to see them do is to really solve this, battery charging thing, and you can do it from two ways. I've seen experimental materials at MIT. They're both superconductive and super capacitive at the same time. So, if you can make the battery charge instantly, then you can get by with not having as large a reservoir. But I think if you're really asking what the average consumer wants, I think that's it.
Apple doesn't make products for the average consumer, though.
Exactly.
That's true.
However, I have to say the iPhone is the best battery life of any of the flagship phones out there.
But I mean,
the
iPhones are. I mean, especially some of the less expensive models. You see kids with them. You see. I mean, you see average folks with iPhones at this point.
What was the study we just saw? 75% of teenagers have iPhones. 75%.
They may not have
admittedly,
the latest,
there's SEs, there's less expensive iPhones out there. But Apple really owns mind share, if nothing else.
No, I think the iPhone has become a consumer, a mainstream
at least in the
consumer
U.S.
product. In the U.S.
By the way, that's unique to the U.S. I think.
And remember, I mean, the Pixels are $600 and some dollars. So the Apple's at the Samsung.
Remember the holy hell that was raised when Google dared to charge going rates for its flagship phone because the Nexuses used to be cheaper.
Right, because they used to be really a reference design. They were there to stimulate other companies.
I think everything you've said so far, all of you, is logical. But there's something about price is a hot button. It's very visceral for people and very emotional, and people will get angry about this price. I guarantee you.
I think what people need is something to get angry about.
That's a good point.
Instead of everything.
That's human.
Instead of yelling at our politicians, we yell at Apple.
You're going to yell at Apple about something. Maybe it's getting rid of the headphone jack. Maybe it's the price. There's got to be something that people are going to get angry about. Price is convenient.
Well, as Leo and I have both experienced being tech journalists, people get incredibly emotional about their technology. I have gotten literally hate mail from people because they thought I didn't like their favorite operating system, whether it was Windows or IBM OS2 or Mac OS. I mean, the fact is I'm actually fairly ambidextrous. I actually don't really care. I'm critical and supportive of all operating systems. But there are people who think I'm in Apple's camp and others who think I'm in Windows camp, and they send me hate mail. I mean,
I've gotten death
religious.
threats.
Sigmund Freud coined a term for it. Did you know this?
No, what's that?
The narcissism of small differences. precisely that communities with adjoining territories and close relationships that engage in constant feuds and mutual ridicule because to hypersensitivity of details of differentiation.
Wow.
This is a human condition.
Wow.
This is a human condition. And it is always true. The most bitterest battles are fought over the smallest differences.
No, I'm serious. I've gotten death threats over minor changes in Evernote.
Death threats.
All the time, yeah.
Wow.
Death threats.
Yeah, like handwritten and delivered on paper, like to my house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's right.
It's like super creepy.
Either you want passionate customers, right? But not that passionate.
Yeah.
You hope that that's just, they don't act on it. They're just thinking these things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's creepy, and yeah, it's small stuff.
Yeah, the smaller the potatoes, the bigger the French fry.
Remember the bumper sticker thing? The Windows 2000 equals Mac 94 or something like that.
Yeah.
People put bumper stickers.
Nuts. We've been watching this for decades.
But
It's just nuts.
In all seriousness, I think there's at least two dimensions of what it means to make technology for the normal person, for the average person. We've been focusing on price, but there's a much more important one, which is usability.
Yes.
Like Apple has really been ahead of the curve on usability, on making stuff for the average person
Really?
in
You
terms
think
of
so?
usability.
I
Absolutely.
would disagree with you.
Come on, compare any of the iPhones with any of the Android phones.
Maybe it's just my brain, but I
Compare,
find
like-
the Android phones infinitely
You know what I
easier.
like?
For instance,
Yeah.
it's so trivial, and this is where Apple used to be. I'll agree with you. In 1984, when they came out with the Mac, partly because of Jeff Raskin, they had a very well-defined philosophy of user interface that informed everything, and they told every developer, this is how you do it. They published a book of it.
Yeah.
I would completely disagree. In the iPhone case, every app has a different UI. Where are the settings in an app? It could be anywhere. Where's the back button? There is none.
Yeah.
How often do you exit an app on an iPhone app by pressing the home button because you can't figure out how the hell to get back to the previous page?
And you know what drives me
crazy?
crazy?
Every day.
To add to that,
That's terrible user interface.
One thing that Android does, if you swipe up from the bottom on Android, all of your apps are alphabetical. You can put them on the screens wherever you want, but they're listed alphabetically by swiping up.
There's
Apple,
another good example.
I
Springboard hasn't
sit there-
changed since 2007.
I sit there trying to figure out where the heck is my
They
icon.
added folders. That was the one difference.
I'm not saying that Apple's usability is perfect.
Thank you.
I'm just saying that it's better than anyone else's.
I'm not sure.
I
think
remember-
that used to be true, but I'm not sure that's still true.
I remember this example. This was a few years ago. I remember the first time that I got a modern MacBook. It's probably, 10 years ago. And I plugged some USB thing into it, like a presentation remote or something. I plugged some USB thing into it. And I had this experience where, it didn't do anything. And I was like, wait, it's not doing anything. But then I actually used it and it worked. And I had this shocking revelation that the Apple design philosophy was when you plug something into the USB port, it's supposed to just work.
Right.
If you plug something into a Windows computer's USB port, especially 8-9 years ago when this happened, you would get a whole, even when it worked, it would be I detected that you plugged in something in the USB port. Now I'm installing a driver. Now success.
That was 8 or 9 years ago.
And that philosophy is carried through. Look at the AirPods right now compared to any other wireless headset. It's just good usability.
I think that's generally true, but I think that, I had a really interesting experience. When my company, back before I was running for Congress, this is about a year ago, we were really, really sitting down prototyping AR and VR apps. We were trying to make emotional sensing APIs.
Oh, interesting.
And so really cool stuff, figuring out what your voice intonations were trying to signal to people, where you looked, what that was trying to signal. Tons of interesting research out there for it. And I had the experience, I had not built a Windows machine since, the 90s when I was in high school. And we did. We built it. We started working with, Windows 10. And I Rocket on Relay, we are all Apple fans. I love Apple. I mostly use Apple.
That's Brianna's podcast on Relay with wonderful. Everybody should listen to Christina Warren and Simone de Rochefort.
De Rochefort?
She said the French way, de Rochefort.
She does.
You guys are great.
She's French.
It's a wonderful, wonderful show.
I think Christina really carries it for us.
And Christina also is you're all three of you are big Apple fans. Yeah.
But my point is, I think that if you're really in the Apple ecosystem, you kind of don't notice that when you start a new iPhone, from scratch, that now it has 20 modal dialogues that you have to go through instead of
you have to enter your password
100 times. over and over. And I do think that it's better than anyone else, but I think it's closer than I think us Apple fans like to give credit for sometimes, in my opinion.
I think they used to be absolutely premier.
Oh, yeah.
It did used to be the computer for the rest of us. It has not been the computer or the phone for the rest of us in some time.
There was there was a time in the 90s when there was just no comparison between a Mac and a Windows
Windows was
machine.
horrible.
But
what am I sitting on? What are you sitting on? I love this Windows. This is a Surface Studio.
My desktop computer at home is a Mac, and I like it. It's fine. But I just
you know what I
go
use
back
now?
and forth.
Because I got so frustrated with the lack of hardware on the Macintosh, and I've never really been a fan of Windows. And Windows 10, which is admittedly the best Windows in a long time, I just use Linux everywhere. And actually, I buy a Windows machine, I put Linux on it, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't. People are going to think I'm insane if I say this, but I do think Linux is the easiest to use. So there, I said it. And actually, what that only proves, Phil, is that you think whatever you use day in, day out is the easiest to use.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, that's true.
None of it's technology
Well, it is the easiest
not
if you
easy
know
to
it
use.
well. If you use it day in, day out,
ask
it is
Frank.
easier.
Technology is not easy to use, right?
Yeah.
Frank's out there emptying the trash. He says, "I forget it. I don't want to have anything to do with it."
He's pounding on the door right now, trying to agree with
No, but even buying a car today, I mean, it took me about a week to really get used to my new car because it's
the
different.
pedals are all the same. The steering wheel's the same.
Yeah,
It's
but
not that much
then there's the autopilot and the blind spot monitoring technology, and I still haven't figured out the GPS on my car. I just use my phone because I don't bother with the car's GPS.
Nobody's got a blinking 12 on their VCR anymore. Things have improved.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a break. This is a great panel. Brianna Wu is here. Running for Congress in the Massachusetts 8th, BriannaWu2018.com, co-founder of Giant Space Cat. And now we know her secret superpower is that great podcast. Relay.
That's how I'm going to win this.
It's kind of like being The Apprentice. You know, that helped Donald Trump.
Yeah. You know what?
A star.
You know, after Reagan got elected, I thought, oh, that's it. You have to be a movie star and you can get elected.
Right.
And that didn't pan out that way, but I was a little worried. So, but now you have to be a podcast star and you'll get elected, right, Brianna? It's automatic.
I think it's a really good skill to develop, like talking about things and explaining it clearly to people. I think it's a very relevant, skill for anyone. I think the other really big skill is I think we need engineers in Congress. I think we need people that will think about problems holistically, will not treat it like you're arguing for a side, and will just look at all the options on the table. Anyone that's worked on a dev team knows that you have to really think outside the box sometimes to ship a product. And I think we need that mindset in Congress.
Also here, a guy who really knows what he's talking about, from Evernote, former chairman, CEO of Evernote. He now is CEO at All Turtles, which is all about creating amazing artificial intelligence applications for all of us, all-turtles.com. Phil Libben, it's great to have you.
Nice to be here.
Traditionally, I try to get tech journalists on. But I have to say, and usually I avoid the entrepreneurs and the CEOs.
Me too.
Because most of them are mealy-mouthed, especially when they're running a company. The last thing you're going to ask them is, you're not going to go to a CEO and say, well, tell us about your company and not get an ad, right? But you're great. You really, and because of all your experience with product design, I think your insights are very much appreciated. Thank you.
It's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, Larry Maggot, who, like me, is an ink-stained wretch.
Right.
No, I'm not ink-stained.
We don't know anything.
we just report on it.
Exactly.
We don't have to know anything. We don't have to.
It's like they say, those who can do, those who can't teach, and those who can't teach teachers. Well, I'm a former professor of education.
There you go. Yeah. From CBS News Radio. That's
CBS
the new
News,
name.
The new name, CBS News
Used
Radio.
to be CBS Radio News, but then they got a consultant.
Yeah, they've never explained to me why they changed it. But
and don't forget his site, where he is the CEO of ConnectSafely.org, but that's a nonprofit.
That's a nonprofit, and we do internet safety, privacy, security.
I'm good at not making a profit myself.
Well, we started out not to make a profit. We succeeded. So we're doing well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Our show today brought to you, and literally brought to you by Sonic. We are connected to the world via 10 gigabit symmetric fiber.
Ooh.
And when I say that,
I want that.
geeks go, ooh. The funny thing is there's nothing in the place that goes faster than a gigabit. All our so I can get a gigabit But we got 10 total, and actually that's
Did they run
awesome.
a cable for you, or how did you
No,
get that?
there's fiber to the
Can I get
premises.
that at my house where I live? Maybe
You can
Maybe
get
not.
Sonic at your house if you live in San Francisco.
I don't. I'll move.
East Bay, North Bay. Sonic is the best internet service provider. Not because you're going to get 10 gigabit, but they do offer. Wait till I tell you what the gigabit internet that includes 15 email accounts. 15, a gigabyte. By the way, properly configured email accounts. A gigabyte of storage. You get a new domain name and personal web hosting. You get fax line service. You get home phone service. You can port your phone number to because it's real phone service. Unlimited local and long distance. You get all of that for $40 a month. But one of the reasons I love, now I know most of you listening can't get this, so it's just making you crazy.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love this and I love to talk about it is it shows that what these other guys are charging you for service that's not as good is really a ripoff. It is possible to be a profitable company to give you this kind of service, to stand up for your rights. There are no bandwidth caps. They fight government subpoenas and orders. They provide local support, private browsing, friendly support, uncapped bandwidth, and a great price, and they make a profit. So it is possible. And I think that this is really, if you go to EFF's ratings of internet service providers, green check boxes all the way across. It's one of the few. Here's what you do. Go to sonic.com, sonic.com/twit, and enter your address. See if you can get it. If you can, get it. Get your first month free and phone service, plus bundle it with Dish. You'll get $120 on your Sonic bill. SONIC, sonic.com/twit. I know for most of you going there is going to be depressing.
It's checking me right now.
Yeah.
Checking my address.
But they are rolling it out. And we actually, I interviewed Dane Jasper, their CEO, who's a friend of mine, been a friend for 20 years. He has his license plate says Linux, by the way, and I like him for that. Oh, yeah. He said we can make a profit. We have to get 1 in 5 houses to subscribe. That's it.
When I moved into my new place, my neighborhood has Sonic, but my building didn't. So I got to check again. It's been like 2 years. I got to check again.
Yeah, I bet they
do.
They really roll it. And I tell you.
Wow, it says it's available. But I don't know if it's the high
you know what?
speed.
That'll be their ADSL product or the DSL2
50
product.
megabits. Not bad. Well, that's a pretty good price.
They do, and they do this Fusion
How do they do
ADSL.
50 megabits? What is
they
that?
do Fusion.
What
They
is
do
that?
2 lines. You get
Over
2 lines.
AT&T's IP network with up to 2 fiber to the new. This is weird.
Well, check it out.
Yeah, it's still actually a pretty good price for 50
Great
megabits.
price.
But,
And
I get
no
100
bandwidth
megabits.
caps.
Yeah.
And they fight the federal request for information. I'm a big fan. Well, we are talking. Let's see, what can we talk about now? We did the iPhone. By the way, we should mention that September 12th it will not just be 3 new iPhones. Apple will finally announce a 4K Apple TV in all likelihood with UHD. They're like the last company. Roku, everybody makes 4K now. Google's Chromecast does 4K. TiVo does 4K. My Android TV, my NVIDIA Shield, everybody does 4K. Apple was one of the last remaining devices, but they had to. I don't know. They had to get it working. I don't know what
I pretty much switched all of my TV stuff to my PS4 Pro, which is 4K.
Yeah.
And I kind of use that for everything, and it's like it's good.
And do you
it's pretty
use
good.
their View service?
I use the View service, which is a little.
So you're a cord cutter.
Yeah.
You don't have cable.
No, I mean I still have Comcast for internet.
You have to have internet.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah.
But I use View and then all the apps on the PS4. It's pretty good. Like I'll try the new Apple TV when it comes out.
This is so typical of Apple because this will come out and then everybody will say, "Oh, Apple invented 4K HDR."
Right.
Every time.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm just glad to have them along the ride. They are apparently going to announce a new Series 3 Apple Watch.
It was a bunch of new 4K movie content because I just saw that Vudu just started doing 4K.
I've been using Vudu's, they call it UDX, I think. I've been using
UHD or something.
Yeah, I've
it's
been using theirs for a long time.
It's good.
And I have to say, more importantly than the resolution is HDR, high dynamic range.
Yeah.
That you'll see more of, because if you're at more than a few feet away from a 4K TV, it's not going to look that different. It's not because you can't see the dots either way with HD or UHD, but you will definitely notice the broader dynamic range of HDR. So if you can get it, that is.
I remember at CES a few years ago, Sony was showing off when 4K was first coming out, and they had a 4K set right by a 1080p set. And my colleague and I were standing there. We couldn't tell the difference.
No, you have to get right up next to it.
Could not tell
You
the
have to put
difference
your
at
nose-
any reasonable distance. But
Yeah. But that's always been.
that was before
I don't
HDR.
know. I'm like you. I have my PlayStation. I use it whenever I can. The problem is like the controllers drain so quickly.
Yeah.
I like my Apple TV because I'm also a cord cutter, but I can't help but feel like we were talking about Apple's, kind of the lessening of usability as a priority in the products they ship. I think Apple TV is a really great example of, Apple kind of not thinking about the mass market.
Crap
the controller,
I
if you pick it up.
hate that remote. I hate the Apple TV
Not
remote.
just the remote,
terrible.
even
I hate
the
the remote.
interface.
So
They haven't.
terrible.
It's just a grid of icons. They haven't updated that in ages.
I hate
too.
that remote.
Brianna, what are you
It's
doing
terrible.
for TV news? How are you getting your television news?
We have it at my campaign headquarters, so I get it there.
She goes to
And when
work
I'm
like
home,
the rest
I'm
of
off
us.
I'm off the clock,
So you don't watch MSNBC or CNN at home, or
I don't.
Any of the
I have to
TV?
admit, back in 2004.
I mean, you can do that now with
I-
cord cutting.
I guess
Yeah,
it depends
I
on what market you're in, but View has locals, right?
Yeah. I think I get everything.
I have.
you can do it now. Finally,
I use YouTube TV, which actually I really like the interface of YouTube TV.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah, I
is the
like it.
grid of stations, and it does include MSNBC, Fox News. I don't think CNN is on here. I think
See, I
Warner.
sort of need to have CNN, Fox, and MSNBC.
You have to have all three of them.
There are just moments when I kind of feel like I do, but I
Look
probably
at this,
don't have
though.
to.
I love this. When you hover your mouse over the, it goes live. So this
Wow.
is what a channel guide
That's-
should
that's
do.
actually cool.
This is what a channel guide
that's-
should do because it
Now,
shows
can you do this on a television set through through Roku
No,
or
they don't
anything?
have an Apple TV app. They don't have an app for any of those devices. Let me go to.
This is why I used to have a
It's
PC
a built-in
connected to my
DVR,
television.
and this is the really cool thing. So if I go to the news section, all four of these are live, and so is the sports. So if I'm trying to figure out what I want to watch, if I'm watching live channels, they'll actually show it live.
That's pretty cool.
That's
cool.
YouTube. This is the best UI I've seen for TV.
Yeah.
But if you're not in the right markets, there's a limited number of markets that have live and live locals and all of that stuff. It also has a DVR built in, and you can have multiple users with independent DVRs on the same account. So I can record different shows than Phil because Phil does all those Cartoon Land stuff. He loves that.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's all Rick and Morty all the time.
I
knew.
Yep.
Love it. I want to talk about the Apple Watch. I think this is a really interesting problem, and I'm very interested to see how Apple, is going to solve it. The first one, I think it's a good product, but the only thing I use it for now, 2 years later, is for working out. It's a really, really good workout gadget to give you heart rate and like feedback information. But, it's like the interface on it is just this big rat's nest of apps, and you're, trying to
And the apps
find
aren't
it
very
on there.
good.
The apps suck.
I agree.
Not
Android-
fully the app's fault, though. There's very limited capability in this thing,
Yeah,
right?
it's very slow back and forth. I think the look of it is a very thick product. I used to wear my Apple Watch when I would do TV, like, This Week in Tech. I don't these days because I think the fashion of it is kind of not the best. So, the thing is, the rumors are saying they're going to add an LTE radio to it.
Lame.
And what I can't figure out is how terrible the battery life in it already is.
And why do you need it?
It's horrible.
There's one rumor, which I don't actually think it's true for this year, unfortunately, but I hope they get to it at some point, which would be absolutely world-changing, which is if they manage to get the glucose monitor in.
Yeah.
Like if
That
they
would be amazing
actually
for people to
crack
use it, yeah.
a glucose monitor that you can wear,
Without a
that is a $1 trillion thing. That will change the world.
This rumor comes from the fact that Tim Cook was talking to a college group in Texas and said, I'm wearing a glucose monitor right now. Though, if you read it carefully, it didn't look like it was
Yeah.
by Apple.
I mean, I was
a
wearing one the
third-
last time I was on this show.
But
it was a third party.
There already are glucose. In fact,
not continuous penetrationless, right?
They have to have a
Non-invasive.
penetration. Yeah, they're invasive.
And this is
yeah.
what apparently is being promised as a non-invasive.
that could be amazing.
Glucose monitoring is going to completely change the world as soon as someone has real-time non-invasive. It's like
Do you
will
think
start
people who are not diabetic will buy it just to
absolutely
prevent diabetes?
No,
to make sure
for so much more stuff.
Why?
It's like it's key to everything.
Everybody in this country over 40 is pre-diabetic
that's
if they're
probably
not
true.
yet.
It's more
type
than
2
just that. It's
diabetic.
actually it's key for mood, for mental concentration, for physical
Interesting.
energy. Like this is the new giant revolution.
Well, if you're
that's gonna
faster,
happen.
one of the things you absolutely want to monitor is your glucose.
Well, I mean,
blood sugar.
I used to monitor it real time. I don't anymore because it basically doesn't change for me because I'm
Right.
fasting, so it's fine. But for normal people, it's critical.
Were you type 2 diabetic?
I was pre-diabetic.
Pre-diabetic, yeah.
I was too at one point.
Metabolic syndrome.
I had syndrome X at one point.
I can't stress enough how important it would be if somebody actually released a mainstream wearable, non-invasive.
Yeah, I'm type 2
glucose
diabetic, and I do prick my
You
finger.
do? Okay,
and it's
so
a
for you
pain
it'd
in
be...
Oh,
yeah.
Keister.
I was wearing the continuous one on my arm from Abbott that you still can't get in the U.S., but you can get them in Europe.
Right, I remember you talked about that last time.
Yeah.
Did that sandpaper your arm? How did it get
No, it was like a little needle that you
It
just,
did
like,
prick you.
Yeah, you had to stick. I mean, which is fine, but the difference, I think, in general of adoption rate between a product that requires you to stick yourself with a needle and a product that doesn't is going to be like 1,000x.
And it is a giant market.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I saw the numbers. It was tens of millions.
You can't
It's
turn on
much-
television sets without seeing ads for diabetes.
It's much bigger than people think. It's not just diabetes. It's literally everyone. Like it's going to be. There's 7 billion people on this planet that ought to be doing continuous glucose monitoring.
In other words, there's a very strong financial incentive.
So you're saying
through
like when you're
Apple or
working,
somebody.
like I bicycle ride. So if I had a way of knowing that it was time for a candy bar or a break, or
It's never time for a candy bar. It turns
or
out.
whatever, some form of.
It's always time for a candy bar. What are you, nuts?
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, that's why you don't want to monitor your glucose.
exactly, yeah.
You don't want to see those spikes.
Well, actually, there are times when you need instant energy. Maybe it's not, you need something real
you
quick.
carry those little packets of goo around
When I bike, I like
that is
peanut
the
butter.
worst stuff for you. But
I do.
I don't.
Turns out I'm not actually a
Really,
doctor.
Brianna, you carry that stuff around?
I do. I run 7 miles a day, so
Wow.
I love you. Yeah.
And what do they call that? I'm told by the advertising industry that it's called bonking.
Well, there's a product called BonkUs.
So what I carry is peanut M&Ms because I like the combination of
See, I don't
protein,
exercise,
fat,
so I
and
know.
sugar all together. So unless you have a
So you don't
eat
need
Reese's
So you don't need
peanut
any
butter?
of
no,
that stuff.
peanut M&Ms have real peanuts in them. And so if you're biking and you need some energy, you're also getting a little
Do you know how
fat
many
and protein.
calories are in one
Well, you know how many
package of
calories you
peanut
burn
M&Ms?
when you're riding your bike up hills? I mean,
sure you're burning.
So it doesn't really have much to do with calories.
Yeah.
It's more to do with your insulin resistance, which you're completely killing yourself by eating those things.
Okay.
So yeah, better not to.
So what do you eat when you're exercising really strenuously? You need some energy.
Fat.
Nothing. Yeah, my own fat.
Okay,
It
nothing.
sounds disgusting, but it's like the new science on this is actually pretty compelling. You don't need the carbs; you only need them for the first few weeks. And the key to it is real-time glucose monitoring. Like the insights that I got for wearing a real-time glucose monitor for a couple of months, life-changing and staggering. Like I've lost 90 pounds.
Wow.
Everything is like
So
infinitely better.
Give
and
us
it's
a
basically
hint
because of that.
some of the insights that you learned. I know from my own finger prick, the morning is the worst. They call it the dawn syndrome because you ramp up your liver excretes glucose in the morning. So that's my highest.
There's so much stuff.
But you eat, it goes up.
Depends on what and
You
depends on
exercise,
when.
it goes down.
Yeah, there's a lot of variability, but it's pretty important, and not just for diabetes stuff. Like also, honestly, just for mood. Like my mood is much better than it ever was.
I get
and
cranky.
for
I get
concentration.
Well,
What is
I
it?
actually
hangry. That's when I eat a Snickers.
I had abdominal surgery a couple of years ago, and I didn't eat much for weeks afterwards, and I actually felt euphoric much of the time,
definitely.
and I couldn't quite figure out what
that's called fasting.
Yeah, mild euphoria. Is very common.
You feel great.
I feel great. I mean, I feel great now.
But did that last? Did that sustain itself? Yeah. Okay.
As long as you don't eat. But the problem is not eating doesn't sustain itself.
Yeah, it does.
Eventually, you have to eat.
Well, eventually. What's your long? You told us it was like 11 days, right? Your longest fast, something like that.
I don't think I've gone more than 8, but
8,
it's
okay.
it's just based on the calendar. Like I just
a total fast of just water, no juices.
no calories. So like
No
black
calories?
coffee.
It's
and
easy to do after the first day. The first day's hard, and then your body goes, "I'm fine."
hard compared to what? I mean,
Yeah, it's not that
compared
hard.
to
Wait a minute, you're eating
diabetes.
you're drinking black coffee on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
And how's your intestinal?
Great.
Oh, it's amazing.
And doing it now. It's
Wow.
great.
Dr. Fung says you could put a little heavy cream in it if you want.
Dr. Fung, yeah, that guy knows what he's talking about.
That's my guy.
This week in health.
Yeah.
All that aside, seriously, glucose monitoring, when someone nails that in a consumer device that's non-invasive,
I agree.
like
It's big business.
$1 trillion.
Yeah.
So do you think Apple actually may do that this year? Is that
Well,
likely?
I hope so.
Can
I
I
kinda
point
doubt
out
it.
this has been
I doubt
the
it.
holy grail for a decade?
Yeah, but so is lots of other stuff.
Yeah, but I think Apple and many other companies are well aware of the potential economic gains from making one of these. It's hard.
I would love to see it. I doubt it'll happen this year, but only because it would just be so amazing if it was. I'm just skeptical, but I hope to get to it pretty soon. There's two things.
That's a big idea that makes sense for Apple. Like that is something that I could really see, selling the Apple Watch. I think the question is, this year for this event, what can they do to really, get excitement in this product again. I mean, as far as it being an exercise device, I think they did as good a job as been done, in the smartwatch sector.
But I have an Android watch
that
does an adequate job as well for that.
Okay, sure.
Not much,
what are they going to do? Like, pan personal access to get you into your building. I'm not really sold that the security is there on that. We've seen some really, scary stories come out lately about, Apple home compatible, locks and, how vulnerable they can be. Mm-hmm. I want to see Apple really knock a home run in this category, but it's hard to imagine that an LTE, radio in it is, what we need.
When you get into Congress, are you going to be regulating these watches? I mean, you start to.
It strikes me. I'll let her finish.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. Well, I think that's a good question. Like, Leo, when you're talking about, this, my first thing is, wow, I bet the, medical devices are very, very, very heavily regulated.
They are, yeah.
And it's like, I would imagine that would be a real, blockade to Apple really innovating in this product category.
A non-invasive glucose monitor, there's already carve-outs for it. It wouldn't be that hard. If they can demonstrate that it worked, it wouldn't.
I know.
I've looked into that.
I know that with things like blood pressure, things like that, there's certain things you have to, like, that's another thing is to be able to have blood pressure monitored in real time.
Yeah, I mean, that's
great.
Less important, but yeah.
This is the article I've referred to this before from May of this year. Rachel Becker writing in The Verge about how hard it is to do non-invasive, or she calls it needleless, blood sugar monitoring. And there are companies who have tried and failed. There's a book called The Pursuit of Non-Invasive Glucose, Hunting the Deceitful Turkey.
Look, there's it was hard to, send up a rocket and then have it land back down. But
I agree.
At some point, people did it. Like, there's two major consumer hardware platforms that are going to be new, that are going to each cause trillions of dollars of new opportunity. It's when someone actually gets AR in a form factor that's not much bigger than glasses. So like an actual head-mounted
very
AR.
hard to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be amazing, and non-invasive real-time glucose monitoring. Like, those two things are world-changing, and I really think both are going to happen in the next 5 years.
Why don't you think
maybe in the next 2?
Why wouldn't blood pressure be very important?
It's good to good to know.
Yeah.
That one's actually easier. In fact, your earbuds are because they're in the ear, capable of monitoring blood oxygen levels, heart rate, as well as blood pressure.
Yeah,
so that is actually, I can imagine
That's
Apple
doable,
doing some sort of medical device for the ear.
Think about it on a watch. You actually could do a blood pressure thing on a watch. Wouldn't be that hard.
Maybe you could. I don't know. I'm not. We're not doctors, so.
But we play them on TV.
We are trying. We are trying.
Yeah.
Is that it for Apple's Apple TV, Apple Watch with LTE? I think, Phil, I gotta say the reason Apple's doing that is merely because they want you to stream Apple Music on your watch. And seriously,
what a waste.
A lot of what Apple does is about boosting Apple Music. I mean, why is Apple spending $1 billion on original content, original television content? Because it will boost Apple Music.
I went out of my way to figure out how to turn off streaming music on my watch, because it was annoying. Every time I played music, my phone was coming to my watch.
Yeah. You got to get AirPods. That's what you need. And that's another product Apple would love you to get. They are #1 in Bluetooth headphones because of the purchase of Beats.
Short of glucose monitoring, the thing that would make me wear an Apple Watch again, and I'm not wearing one now, would be a radically different screen and battery performance, so that the screen was actually on all the time, so I could use it as a watch.
Yeah, it even fails at that basic.
Yeah, it's not a good
function.
watch.
It's not a good
watch. How many things are we willing to charge every night? I mean, we all charge our phones
I don't
every
mind.
night. It bugs me to have to think about.
In fact, it's easier because you just plug everything in at night, including my car. By the way,
you're true.
It all gets plugged in.
By the way, did you charge your car during the heat wave? Because I heard some people were saying not to charge your car. Yeah.
Lithium-ion batteries hate heat.
Oh, is that right?
In fact, a lot of what the Tesla is engaged in is keeping them cool.
Explain why.
Yesterday, when it was 170 degrees, 107, not 170. When it was 107 degrees yesterday, I went out after the show, and my car fans were all on max. The Tesla was trying to desperately to keep the temperature of those lithium-ion batteries.
So my Prius was getting lower. I have a Prius. It was getting lower gas mileage. I typically get about 61.
Bad for the chemistry.
Yesterday I was getting like 50. Is that why? Because the heat.
Bad for the chemistry. Yeah.
My Uber driver was kind of nasty too. So
yeah, and they get so cranky.
They get cranky. Yeah.
They get so cranky.
Yeah.
Did you have an Uber driver driving an electric car? Why don't they?
Wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I was driving a Porsche Cayman yesterday, looking at buying
nice.
one of them. So I'm a bad
Oh.
environmentalist.
Oh,
Terrible.
nice. No, I think you have to drive a Prius. I think that's the rule if you're in Congress.
Yeah, I
You
think
know, I feel like I've earned this. I feel like I've earned
Good
this.
for you. Good for you.
I haven't touched my car in like a year.
Isn't that a nice feeling?
Yeah, well, except I went to start it like a month ago, and it didn't even pretend to respond.
It did nothing.
It didn't even.
It doesn't
do,
like you anymore.
No, it didn't. Even, like there was no faint little light. There was no like little whine. It was like nothing. It was like
Nothing.
a statue of a car.
Wow.
It's
So you
just
do Uber everywhere you go, or what do you?
Well, I walk a lot.
Yeah.
And if I can't
Truthfully,
walk, I Uber.
Uber
or
is
Lyft.
probably cheaper than owning.
Oh,
a car.
probably.
Yeah. No, I would not buy a new car.
Yeah.
So I own this car. At some point, I have to figure out how to get it removed from my garage. But
Couple more Apple
never buy a new
stories,
car in my
and then
life.
we will move on. New boss in the Siri division, which is, thank God, Eddie Q, who has been in charge of Siri, is being replaced by Craig Federighi of the beautiful hairdo.
Why? Thank God, I like Eddie.
Eddie's also in charge of iTunes, another blight on the Apple escutcheon.
iTunes still around? They still have it?
I feel like Eddie's probably a great guy. He's certainly kind of a fun guy. But I don't know how good he is like running a software division. Craig, who of course is in charge, he's a software SVP in charge of iOS and Mac OS, seems like he'd be the right person to be running the Siri division, as opposed to the guy who's trying to sell music and Hollywood for Apple, right?
I have a lot of respect for both of them.
You know him. I don't know either one of them. You know him, obviously. So you think Eddie is a good technical guy?
I do.
Okay. All right. I take it back then. You speak from knowledge. I speak from ignorance. However, I for one, am glad to see Craig taking over Siri. This we only know this from Apple's executive page, but
I think it's a fair critique of Siri, and I use it all the time on my phone.
Do you?
Do you?
I
I'm
gave
one of
up
these
long
people.
ago.
I haven't used it in years.
I'm the one use case of somebody that uses Siri every single day, dozens of times.
What do you do with
but
it?
I've never. I'm sorry.
What do you do with it?
Scheduling appointments, calling people, bringing music up, doing Google searches, primarily the calendar, but
if you're
or even
calling
just
from the
asking how the
car.
Red Sox game is going. I'm sorry?
If you're making a phone call while you're driving, you have to use a hands-free, at least in
You
California by
absolutely do.
law, and should
Yeah,
by safety. So.
Yeah, it's built into my Audi TT right now. But I mean, my point is, I think if you look at Siri and where it was when it came out, I really would have thought that it would be more evolved by this point. I don't think it's as intelligent as we need it to be. I think that it still goofs up questions a lot more than it should to truly be usable. And, I was thinking about this the other day. I've never once used Siri on my Mac. And that was one of the really big features for this last release of Mac OS. So, I do think that maybe it's time for some new leadership there.
I'm annoyed.
Siri's a good product, but
I don't use
it's
Siri
just
on
not
my
for
Mac,
this-
and I don't use Windows Hello on my PC, mainly because these have good keyboards, and I'm always sitting. I'm not driving or walking while I'm using them. But while I'm walking or driving, or even trying to type on a tiny little screen, the more I can use my voice, the happier I am. And none of these are really great. I mean, okay, Google's okay. Siri's got a long way to go. But at some point, these are going to be great.
I think, I'm annoyed every time I accidentally pop up Siri on my Mac because I hit the touch bar.
Yeah,
by
I do too,
accident. I hate that. I don't use it much on my phone because I don't drive mostly anymore, but I think I would if I drove. At home, I use a schedule for everything.
Me too.
And that
Me
works
too, yeah.
great. In
Yeah.
fact, I can't
By the way, you just said the word. Everybody
I
who
know.
has an
Yeah,
echo.
only call
in
it
the
an
country-
echo. We call it echo.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I don't think the way I said it would have triggered it because it wasn't the start of the sentence.
Oh.
But I kind of I'm waiting, hopefully sometime this year, for everything in my house to just be based on Echo. TV,
You may
all
not
of
be
that
waiting
stuff.
long.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Siri will be the topic of conversation on September 12th because Apple will probably talk a little bit about its HomePod, its speaker, which is Siri controlled. That'll be out later this year, but I imagine Apple will talk a little bit
And
about
by the way,
it.
this week, Microsoft and Amazon announced a relationship,
Isn't that
Yeah.
weird?
which is very
That's
interesting.
cool.
Jeff
about-
Bezos
yeah.
said,
Yeah.
we are going to put Cortana in Echo.
Right, or Echo and they're going to work together.
Well, or they'll do,
Yeah.
go both ways.
Which is very smart.
And Bezos's, thesis was, we will all have many assistants.
Right.
Just like you have many friends. And just as I would say, if I'm going to ask Phil, if I wanted to know about glucose, I'd ask Phil. And if I want to know about missing kids, I'd ask Larry. That you would ask different questions of different assistants. It's not what I want, by the way.
Sometimes I say the wrong word, like I'm talking to my...
It's sort of like, too confusing.
It's sort of like mentioning your girlfriend.
I want one
wife,
assistant, and it should know who to ask.
Well, but I want to have it respond to one word, whatever word that is, because I have to.
And I want to be able to tell.
The other thing is I have two echoes.
Amanda.
I have an echo in my.
Aisha.
I have echoes.
Cedrin.
I have echoes in. I can't get into edgewise with you. Leo, stop. That's what I tell. That's what I tell
works.
Echo, right?
Yeah.
See, it works. I have an echo in my kitchen and echo in my living room, and there's no real wall between them.
They both respond.
So they both. Well, but I had to. So one of them responds to a different word. To Amazon. I'll say Amazon because everybody. And the other one responds to that other word that I won't say.
I had my Echo respond to computer for a while, but I realized I say that word a lot. So it was triggering all the time.
Can you do that? I thought you only had the choices of the two words.
No, Amazon, computer, Echo, and the A word.
The A word.
So I want to take a break because I want to actually, we kind of, there's a really big story out there about Google. Kashmir Hill wrote a scathing article, and I want to get what your guys' take on this because this is quite an accusation that Kashmir Hill made. And it's on the heels of another accusation about Google quashing ideas and stories it doesn't like. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Stamps.com. You got to start using your time more effectively if you're going to the post office, if you're finding parking and getting in line to do simple things like buy stamps or charge up a postage meter or drop off packages. Stop it. If you're doing mail, you need Stamps.com. It brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service to your desk, and you'll never need to go to the post office again. You can buy and print U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail. You don't need a meter at all. Your computer and your printer, that's all you need. It'll print right on envelopes. It'll print your logo and your return address. It'll automatically get the recipient's address from the website. If you're an eBay or Etsy or Amazon seller, you're going to love this. Plus, it just makes your mail look more professional, and it saves you money because you never have to guess on the postage. We're going to get you a USB scale. Stamps.com will use that. It'll recommend a way to say, is this media mail? You could save money. It'll fill out all the forms. If you have customs forms or express mail forms, it does that all. And it's easy. You can create your Stamps.com account in minutes. There is no equipment to lease. There's no long-term commitment. You get the scale. We're going to actually arrange for you to get more than that. We're going to give you $55 in postage credits. Go to Stamps.com, click the microphone in the upper right-hand corner, and fill in TWIT as the offer code for this. It's a $110 offer. It includes a month free of Stamps.com, but also that scale, a supplies kit, and $55 in postage. If you are going, you actually should do this, Brianne, because you're going to be doing a lot of mailing soon.
I have not sent a letter in years, and ever since I started running, you have to send out thank you letters to donors, or if you meet with people, constituents. I'm constantly writing letters. I'm not joking. I will do this as soon as I get off the show.
We have actually two accounts because we were fighting over the scale. Go to Stamps.com. Click the link up in the right-hand corner that says, podcast or radio listeners. It's a microphone. And then use the offer code TWIT for a great deal. Stamps.com.
Does it make sense for people who don't send that many? I send a few.
Well, there's a monthly subscription fee, so you'd have to figure out.
Yeah.
It will. I come to work and print my stamps.
Yeah.
Right. So then I have all the stamps, and you can print them on Avery stamp stuff that's got pre-stickied. And all that.
So it's not like a postage meter. Does it have the date on it, or is it just it's like literally?
No, in fact, they do. This is actually something the U.S. government started a long time ago. It's called Indicia. It's a QR code, and one of the reasons Postal Service loves this because all your mail is automatically machine sorted, right? Everything they've got a barcode under the address. It's all done automatically by machines. They don't have to have humans, so it saves them money. And the Indicia has your account information in it. So, yes. So, for instance, if you go to the post office, if you want to, if I tried to mail a package as more than a pound from the box, they'd send it. No, you can't because it could be a bomb or something. I don't know. But since 9/11, you have to bring it in and show your face, but not with Stamps.com because of the Indicia they know who you are.
And so they only bill. They basically bill you based on when you. It's not. You don't pay for the postage in advance.
I think.
Or
You know what? That's a good question. I think you pay ahead. No, they don't bill you.
Okay.
You buy.
I mean, I had a Pitney Bowes postage meter. When Pitney Bowes' slogan
like
was
that, without that
"Business
crap.
moves the speed of paper." That was their slogan for decades, right? They
What a
smartly
terrible
abandoned.
slogan.
Well, it was a great slogan in the 70s.
At the speed of paper.
That was their slogan. Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
That was their slogan?
Well, that's how business moved because everybody communicated on paper,
speed
right?
Speed of paper.
That was their slogan. Look it up.
That's our title for the show, I think. Moving at the speed of paper. Yeah. Stand back.
Yeah.
But you have some time. You don't have to stand back right away. You have a minute or two before. Oh, all right. So we talked, I think it was last week, we talked about the story. I think maybe hard to know the truth of it. New York Times had a story about a foundation that Eric Schmidt had given a lot of money to, Google had given a lot of money to. The foundation created a report that that actually supported the EU's anti-monopoly claims against Google. At some point, for reasons unknown, the foundation decided to sever its ties with the guy who created that report and his group. And now, and this is the article, I criticized Google, it got me fired, here's how corporate power works. Kashmir Hill, a little bit of a pile-on, tells a story that, frankly, is even a little more scary in her Gizmodo article. Yes, Google uses its power to quash ideas it doesn't like. I know because it happened to me. So this is kind of following on the heels of the New America Foundation story. She wrote a story. She was working for Forbes. She says, I was new at my job. I ran social media. So because I was not only a reporter but ran social media, I got pulled into a meeting with the Google salespeople about Google+. This is when it was just starting out. The salespeople were trying to get Forbes to add a +1 button. You know, there's a Facebook like button and there's a +1 button to their articles alongside the Facebook like and the Reddit share button. They said you had to do this. It's important to do because the plus recommendations would be a factor in search results, a crucial source of traffic to publishers. So she's wearing two hats. Maybe this is part of the problem. She said, this sounded like a news story to me, that in fact Google was saying your search results will be better if you use our +1 button, which is a news story, right? So she asked the Google people, did I hear correctly? If a publisher doesn't put a +1 on the page, search results would suffer. The salespeople in the meeting said yes, but they're salespeople.
Right.
So she did the right thing. She went to public relations. She said, I'm a reporter. Here's what I heard in a meeting. Did I understand correctly? The press office confirmed it. They preferred to say the plus button, quote, influences the ranking, but they did not deny what the salespeople told me. If you don't feature the +1 button, your stories will be harder to find on Google. So she published a story. Stick Google Plus buttons on your pages or your search traffic suffers. She got called on the carpet. Her boss said, wait a minute, that was an NDA'd meeting. You're not allowed to write about it.
Her boss at Forbes? Or her boss?
Google flipped out. This was in 2011. They didn't challenge the accuracy of the reporting, but they called and said you have to unpublish the story because the meeting was confidential. And the information discussed there had been subject to a non-disclosure. She hadn't signed the NDA. She hadn't been told the meeting was confidential. And she, at the meeting, said, I'm a reporter.
Yeah.
She said, I was told, and this is the point you were asking, I was told by my higher-ups at Forbes that Google representatives called them saying the article was problematic and had to come down. It might have consequences for Forbes. She said, I thought it was an important story, but I didn't want to cause problems for Forbes. And I think, by the way, her boss is coming to her is, in effect, putting pressure on her, whether they said take it down or not.
Yeah.
That's putting pressure. It's going to hurt us. So given that I'd gone to the PR team and it was already out in the world, I felt it made more sense to keep the story up. But after continued pressure from my bosses, I took the piece down. Kashmir Hill, who's very respected, said, a decision I will always regret. Forbes declined comment about this, I presume, currently when she contacted them. But the most disturbing part of the experience, what came next? That story disappeared from Google's search results. You couldn't find that story. If you search for it today, you won't find it.
Well, did the story come down?
The story came down, but more importantly, Google scrubbed the search results.
Well, why wouldn't they scrub the search results if there's
No. You should still have a reference to that, even if the story isn't there anymore, right?
Well, not a page that doesn't exist. Now, you might have referenced about art discussions about it.
The article goes on to say it had been mirrored on other sites, and it wasn't found there either.
It was. She says it was unusual websites captured by Google's crawling did not tend to vanish that quickly. And then, so deliberate. She felt that was evidence that they had. I don't know if it's probative or not, but that was evidence that Google manipulated search results to eliminate references to a story they didn't like. To me, that's not so much the issue as Google saying, take that story down.
Well, and part of the question also, I mean, if she was at a meeting, it should have been clear one way or the other if she was under a non-disclosure. I mean, by the way, I will disclose right now, Google supports my nonprofit, and I write for Forbes, so I'm in a funny position on this one. And so I go into meetings all the time with Google under NDA, but I always make it very clear.
Right.
Am I under NDA? And if I am, I am. If I'm not, I'm not.
This is always challenging. In fact, I refuse to sign NDAs or embargoes or of any kind partly because I have a leaky memory and I'm talking all the time.
I remember.
So I prefer not to be encumbered by that. But if I went to a meeting unwittingly that there was an NDA on and then was asked to not report it, that would be a problem.
If they didn't tell you it was an NDA, I mean, especially a sales meeting, I assume that anything in a sales
that's
call,
also why I try not to go to sales meetings, right? You're right. Anything they say in a sales call is to the aim of selling something.
I think the NDA is not the big issue here. You got to unpack the issue. So there's the issue of whether or not it's a good thing or not, or legal or not. If it's literally true that adding the +1 button, that not adding it would hurt your search results, right? There's the actual facts of the story and whether or not that's problematic. And I'm not sure whether it is or not. Yeah. Then there's this sort of general nonsense about NDAs, which if you go to a meeting at almost any of these companies' offices, you're signing NDA just to get in the building. Like most of those sign-in things are NDAs.
As a journalist, so that's meaningless.
It's all meaningless. NDAs in general are bullish. But the story is like, is it okay for Google, which is a private company, to say, hey, we're rolling out this product and using it is going to help your search results? There's a second piece, which is it okay for a reporter to write that in the negative? There's a third piece, which is it okay for her to be pressured to remove it? I mean, these are all, I think those are all the topics. The NDA is like the least interesting part of this for me.
Yeah. Well, the only part that I find interesting is whether or not this discrepancy, whether she thought she was under an NDA wasn't. Well, but you're right. I mean, these other issues are just as troublesome. She
did get a communication. This was added to the article after the fact from Google's Vice President of Global Communications, Rob Shilkin, who said very clearly we had nothing to do with removing the article from the cache. That did not happen, and there's no evidence that did happen. Just anecdotal reporting that it might have happened. And I thought he wrote a good article. He said, from our perspective, a good note to Kashmir, in which he said, we've enjoyed working respectfully with you and are sad to hear you've carried this since 2011, which I think is a good way to start. From our perspective, this was a disagreement over whether the meeting was held under non-disclosure. We thought you had been told that. Had we known you hadn't been told that, we would, of course, have mentioned that because, like most of our client meetings that discuss new features, this is a non-disclosure. We don't want reporters to hear this. This is a client meeting.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Your editor agreed. He told our PR rep the article is being removed because it involved reporting on an NDA meeting. He says, as for the Google cache, it's easy for a website owner to request the cache be cleared. It's very possible that the editor merely put in a request. It's automated, by the way, on the Google tools, Webmaster Tools. But he said, we had nothing to do with removing it. Maybe your editor did. And so this was actually a very conciliatory letter from Rob. I have to say, just like the previous story from the New York Times, there's no smoking gun. It's very much circumstantial that something might have happened.
So that the headline...
I feel like she was very clear in her piece, too, saying, like, look, I can't definitively know this. This is what I can find from what I know. So I think rather than get into, what exactly the situation was, like, Leo, you've run an independent media company. And I think that you probably have very strong feelings about there essentially being a duopoly on how news articles get spread in 2017. You have Facebook and you have like Google results. And that is such a critical component of any media organization getting things out there that I think that's really worth thinking about. I also, I know so many Google engineers. I know the Google engineers I know are genuinely socially conscious. They are genuinely people that want to make the world better with the tools that they have. And I kind of, like my gut goes off a little bit with like insinuating that the work that, they're doing is evil. Like Tim Cook even last week came out with a very thoughtful piece from a reporter that ran into him over breakfast. And Tim Cook was talking about how, with government being able to tackle fewer and fewer things, from his perspective, like corporate leaders had more of a role to step up and help, serve the public good.
Completely agree with that.
There are a lot of people at Google that genuinely think like that and want to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's very concerning when you essentially have two media companies having a duopoly on how news is spread. And for me, like I think if I had to write companies down to good guys and bad guys, I think overall Google would be probably my good guy category. I think they do a lot of really important work, but I do think this is something we should really think carefully about as a society.
The power issue is concerning me, right? So, I mean, as I mentioned before, Google is a supporter of my nonprofit. And I will tell you, they've been good. And I don't agree with them on everything. I've criticized them publicly. I do worry about the amount of power that Google has. I worry about the amount of information they have. Not so much that they're going to do evil with it right now, but the fact that this information is being warehoused. I worry about a future leader in our country, a government, whether it's ours or someone else's, getting into that data, whether legally or illegally, and abusing it. But at the same time, Google has been very good about funding my nonprofit and not getting all upset every time I say something critical. And same thing with Facebook. I mean,
it's really hard because I like you.
And you take ads from some of these companies, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we try not to take ads from a couple of them.
Yeah.
Microsoft, Apple, and Google.
Because you cover them so much, or what?
Yeah, it would be difficult. But at the same time, we also have to assert, we take ads from a lot of companies we cover, and we have to assert that there is a wall between editorial and advertising. There has to be.
And have you ever gotten pressure?
No, never.
Yeah, good.
Let me think. No, I don't think so. People have complained. People have been mad at me, but I don't care about that.
I mean, this is straightforward for me. I think unambiguously, the world is better off because Google exists in it.
Absolutely.
Right. Doesn't mean that it's a perfect company. Doesn't mean that there's not examples of it, of people in Google or even the company itself acting poorly. But to me, there's not even close to a difficult decision. Like, of course, the world is much better right now because Google is in it, and because Apple is in it, and because Facebook is in it, for all the flaws of the companies.
Mm-hmm. But wouldn't the world be a better place if Google just stuck to search and didn't have a content arm with YouTube and didn't have a shopping arm and didn't... In other words, I would love Google. I've always thought this, that Google... I agree. I have friends at Google. I am very impressed by the Google ethics, but I think they do believe don't be evil. But I think we would be better off if Google didn't have its fingers in so many pies.
On the other hand,
they were just a search engine and did everything they could to be the best search engine possible, we would still get the benefit, all that benefit that you're talking about, without these concerns.
What about Android?
Yeah,
right.
Android is and YouTube.
Android should be separate.
YouTube, first of all, YouTube is awesome, and I'm glad. I think the world is better off because we have YouTube.
But I don't think it should be owned by Google.
And second of all, that money that they make with search is helping to fund Waymo, which is their their driverless car company, which is going to save lives.
Well, first of all, I don't get a vote in what Google owns or doesn't own.
Right, but I'm just saying.
I am pointing out that some of the problems we run into with Google come from the fact that it does have so many fingers and so many pies. Yeah. And as a result, the awesome power of its search engine, there's a huge risk here it can be misused because of these other businesses. So and look, they're going to do what they're going to do, which is maximize profit. That's what all American corporations do.
Right.
And that means owning YouTube.
I mean, look, I think the Android...
And starting Waymo.
My good friend Walt Mossberg, who many of you know, he used to write for the Wall Street Journal, is always making fun of me because he's an Android phone, because he thinks that I'm basically giving away my privacy, and somehow thinks that because he owns an iPhone, he's not. And there may be some truth to that. Apple and Google have a different business model. But that does give me some cause of concern, right?
Me too.
The amount of information this one company has simply because I walk around with this thing. So... that's another reason why we need to be concerned.
It's no accident that these two articles appeared this week. I think people are more and more aware of the fact that Google, because it has tendrils in everything we do, and partly because it's so vastly useful, knows a whole lot about us, has a massive database, and we're starting to understand what big data can mean.
Yeah, but the articles did appear, right? And everyone's talking about them. Like these.
I know that's good.
Right, and like this is the check. It isn't. It's just not.
There needs to be a check.
Of the top 20 problems or dangers in the world, Google potentially suppressing search results, which they probably didn't do, about.
No, but it's a symptom, and I agree. I agree with you. It's not a massive, moral risk. However, there is a massive moral risk because of this database, because of what Google knows. At some point that it could be really misused. This is the least of it. Pressuring journalists not to run articles is the least of it. But the point is, the articles, especially the Foundation study, are really about this monopoly. And I think that there's probably some evidence, whether conscious or unconscious, Google would like to suppress the conversation about, are you too powerful? Right? I mean, that's what's happening in the EU, and it's got to be scary for them. Facebook has the same issue. Frankly, Amazon is going to have this issue any day now if it isn't already. It's got its fingers in every economic transaction we make practically.
The new monopoly is definitely data. So it's access to data, access to APIs is definitely a new monopoly.
Yeah.
And the way to cure it is to democratize access. It's a completely already lost game to try to limit the data. Like, you're never going to be able to keep things secret. You're never going to be able to prevent everyone from finding out about stuff. The only thing we can do is make sure that no company has a monopoly on it, that the data is as freely available as possible.
And does Google not have an effective monopoly?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think I think.
Oh, I do. I do.
I think they definitely have some advantages, but I think there's tons of startups, there's tons of companies that can do meaningful things, that can create good products, that can put pressure on Google and Facebook and all the other companies that have a lot of data to make that accessible. I think the next generation in anti-monopoly legislation, when you get to Congress, like the next version of anti-monopoly, antitrust legislation should have nothing to do with the ownership of companies. Companies in general are increasingly archaic. It has to do with access to data. So we'll see antitrust laws that guarantee data access. And we should.
I would agree with that. But, like Phil, you're talking about like a check on the power here. For me, I'm on this show today and like you're talking about Sonic as an ISP provider. And Leo Handegat, I'm seeing her going, can I talk about Verizon and how much money they give to members of Congress to basically, buy certain policies on these committees. Right. So if you want to talk about a check and a balance, it is factual. If you look at the 15 people on the House subcommittee that effectively sets technology policy in the United States, the big telecom companies give them a lot of money. And that is just a mathematical fact. Yeah, I think that weakens that check. So I agree with you, and I think that if Google, we made a decision with AT&T when I was a teenager to allow other people access to that infrastructure if they paid for it. Yep. I think that it overall, I think it was a good move. I can see us doing something like that with Google to democratize this information, but my concern is right now you have some very powerful technology companies that have basically bought the legislation that they want. And I don't believe our current representation in Congress is able to provide a competent check on these business practices.
Yeah, it's not just Google. I mean, that's the
problem with our
nutshell.
But that nutshell is because our government is so useless, right? Not because our companies are doing anything wrong. Like, that's because Congress hasn't done a single useful thing in the past decade or two.
Right? Well, I would disagree with that. Yeah. But I do think there's a serious concern that the power of money in Congress is corrupting.
And everything else, right? Just the general incompetence and low quality of the vast majority of people in Congress.
Let's face it, all government has ever been, going back to 1776, was to preserve the interests of the elites and the landowners. I mean, that's all it's ever been. Government never represents the poorest people of the country. They try to, and I think there's some altruists, and I know Brianna will be one of them in Congress, that will think about that a little bit.
But ultimately,
regardless of the influence of money in politics, That's what government is about,
The
is
United
preserving
States is almost unique in the amount of money that politicians have to spend to get elected.
Outrageous.
It's absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
It's outrageous.
And also how long the campaigns go on.
I honestly think nothing will ever happen until we have a campaign finance reform.
even the fact that
period.
you're
And Larry
having-
Lessig, that's what he ran. That was his campaign platform, single
why?
plan.
And
Yeah,
the fact
can
that
I
you
tell
have-
you,
it's
if you
2000
had my job, if you had my job and you actually had to go out there raising money, it is so much worse than you can know until you've actually
And what
done
did you
this job.
And
It is-
ultimately, if somebody comes to you from a telecom and says, here's a $10,000 check, it's, look, I spend most of my time fending off public relations people, funding off companies that want to send us products, people, my job is to try to maintain as much as possible an objectivity about the stuff I cover. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a member of Congress and have this huge burden of campaign financing.
No one's forcing
and then
you
people
to do it, right? Like, it's a crappy job with a bunch of low-quality people. And okay.
Actually, I don't agree
You
that
said,
it's
are you telling
necessarily
Brianna
low-quality
that she's
people.
nuts to run for Congress?
I think you're taking a big step down, going from podcaster and engineer to a member of Congress. Yeah,
I disagree. I
think it's.
I'm glad
it's a
there's
calling.
somebody
I
who wants to
think
make a
teachers have
difference.
Teachers have a calling, and I think public service is a calling.
Absolutely.
I genuinely do. And, the way we got to this point with the do nothing Congress is because the worst people are the ones out there engaging in the system. So I think you're right. And something I ask myself every single day doing this is how the frack I can do this job and keep my integrity and keep the core
Very
of who I am. Because I tell you, until you do this, until you spend an entire day on the phone fundraising, until you have powerful business interests calling you,
so don't. Don't spend an entire day on the phone fundraising. Don't buy into the nonsense.
Never get
that
elected.
You have
Using money.
You have
Says
to.
who?
You have to raise money because you have to have
It's
a staff, and
get
it is
elected,
very
it's
expensive
expensive.
to have a staff. But you're right. I'm not going to be able to raise as much money as my opponent.
Yeah, I kind of think that there's really very little evidence that the amount of money you raise is directly correlated to the success. I think there's been a lot of
We've
data
seen a lot of
that goes against
very
that.
expensive elections lost.
I think this is just I don't know exactly why you need that much money, what you would spend it on. I think having a good message, using the current platforms to make sure that everyone hears it, connecting at a level
Yeah, it may be that there's an opportunity now, thanks to the internet,
thanks to these companies,
to communicate
which are
directly to users.
it's thanks to Google and
or
Facebook.
Voters, I should say.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why I keep saying the world is better off than it's ever been, largely because of these companies. The last thing I want to do is tie their level of innovation and improvement of the world to the lowest common denominator, which is our government.
No, I agree 100%.
Just because current Congress can't do anything doesn't mean that we should get companies to stop
maybe I'm
actually
showing my
improving
age,
the
but
world.
I grew up at a time when politicians, lawyers, and journalists were actually respected. And
I have no
when
memory
was
of
that?
That's never happened.
At some point, I mean, I remember. Maybe I was. My dad was a lawyer, and I had tremendous respect for the profession. And by the way,
There's a lot more disrespect than there used to
if
be.
you
I'll
meet a
grant you
lawyer,
that. I'll call your dad.
Yeah, well, he's dead, but I mean, so he's
that's
more
about the kind of representation I'll be getting.
right. Yeah. But no, I mean, I don't know if all of our members of Congress or most of them are low quality people or not, or if they're just in a profession which is so burdened by
there's
inability to get anything done that even the good quality ones are having a tough time.
There's another larger story. It's not a tech story, but gerrymandering is a huge problem
issue.
in this country. And I'm very curious what your experience is going to be, Brianna, when you do get elected. You have an experience now. Wait till you go into Congress and you're dealing with those members of Congress in gerrymandered districts that are locked for them as long as they can beat the lowest common denominator in the primary. And that changes the equation 100%. And I think that's one of the reasons we have such a terrible Congress is that Congress got to decide the electoral districts. They were the ones who got to. That's insane.
It's the states that do that.
I mean, the state. Well, it's legislators and parties essentially.
It's the state
but
level
let's be
parties.
honest. Both parties are guilty of this. They keep us yelling at each other. Both parties have separated up the country into their little fiefdoms, and only, if I'm remembering correctly, it's 5 to 10% of races are classified as competitive in any given election. That is a broken system. We are all in technology. We believe in competition. We believe in the best idea winning. They've rigged the game. And I think you're dead on that we've got to have campaign finance reform or nothing is going to substantively get better with our technology policy.
And yet, with all of this, the world's still better in almost every measurable way than it's ever been. And it's not because the government has done stuff about
Technology.
it. It's because of technology. It's because of the companies.
We also live in a funny time when the companies are more progressive than many people in government. I mean, the LGBT issue, even Walmart came out on the right side of that issue.
That's why that Tim Cook interview was very interesting. I agree with you, Phil. I think it's it's absolutely the case that the risk of overreacting to the kinds of pressures Google can offer, or the privacy invasions that Google can offer, is that we will eschew technology. We'll go backwards out of, Jeff Jarvis calls it techno panic.
Yeah, to a worse place.
To a worse place. So I agree with you. This is a balance. We do want some controls on this stuff,
of course,
but we don't want to do it to the point. And when people say, "Oh, don't use Android because it's not safe," my reaction is, well, I don't want to step backwards in technology just because of some imagined harm that could be occurring, and I think that's really always a risk as well, as people will overreact and hold us back.
There's a general, well understood cognitive bias, which is that you sound smarter when you're negative. You sound smarter when you criticize something. You sound smarter when you raise the alarm. It's hard to actually be in favor of something, to be positive, and sound as smart as someone who's criticizing.
And Donald Trump must be the smartest man in the world.
Let's stop right now. Actually, I think Dvorak figured that rule out very early.
But this is like,
his strategy was, whatever it is, I don't like it. I'm against it.
But I think that's right. But like,
you generally win with that, by the way, in technology, because most stuff is going to be crap.
This is the biggest source of ultimately poor decisions, is the negativity bias.
I agree.
Because it actually, it's harder to be rigorously optimistic than to be finding, small examples, taking them out of context, or at least out of proportion, and being negative about it. It feels good to sit around and whine about things. It just does.
I do think that part of Donald Trump's success during the campaign was the fact that he complained and belittled so many things that were happening, some of which probably needed belittling, but a lot of it didn't need belittling. Somebody in the chat room just asked, what happened to the vast election fraud? I mean, he belittled the entire electoral system, and yet was able to game it.
I think there's an experience that I think almost all smart people have. I'm sure pretty much everyone here has had this at some point. You guys probably remember when you first had it. There's this experience that, I think I remember I had it probably in college, where I call it the there are no adults realization.
Yeah.
Where at some point you realize, you go from thinking, well, I'm just a kid, and there's all these other magical beings called adults, and they know what they're doing, and they're kind of taking care of things. And then at some point you kind of say, wow, no one knows what they're doing. It's just people like us. There are no adults.
There's a great Steve Jobs
That's what the world is going through right now.
I wish I could remember it word for word, but in which he basically said, at one point he realized that the world, everything in the world, was made up by somebody not any smarter than he was. Yeah. So he could, there was nothing holding him back from doing whatever he wanted to do.
But this is like a healthy realization. This is happening at a national level. It's happening. It's just happening all over the world. The best thing to come out of the Trump presidency is going to be this realization that there are no adults. Obama is not around to magically do stuff for everyone. You have to do it yourself. That means for companies, for voters, for individuals, for politicians, regardless of what your political affiliation is, this is the no adults realization that the entire world is going through.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit unsettling, but I think ultimately it's a really positive thing.
Yeah. We're looking for a daddy. And there's no daddy yet.
It's just us.
I just am looking for somebody who doesn't lie to me. That's all I want.
Well, that's a good start.
Would you promise?
Can you name one politician who hasn't lied to you?
I don't know. I mean,
George Washington, right?
No, I mean,
Brianna Wu won't lie to you.
I mean, that is horrible.
I don't think I've ever lied to you, Larry.
Not to me, but I'm not your constituency. No, but I'm serious. The idea that you can't trust what comes out of a leader's mouth is just horrendous to me. And it's both parties. I'm not blaming it on one particular individual party, but
I believe everything Kim Jong-un says. I believe it all.
Actually,
everything he says. Well, it's true.
The thing is, though, because it's so hard sometimes to have an adult conversation when you're running for Congress. I'll give you an example. Today, a story came out with Harvey that Texas has $20 billion in the bank, and they are passing on funding any of their own reconstruction, which means states like Massachusetts and California and New York are going to pay to rebuild the state that's pretty well off. I feel like that is a little bit hypocritical. I was trying to talk about that on Twitter, and you just get chewed out if you try to have a nuanced adult conversation. And, it's incredibly challenging because you want to be genuine to yourself and to your constituents. But I feel like it's hard in this climate that it's harder than it's ever been to have an honest discussion about problems. Because as someone running for office, I can't have as honest a discussion with the public sometimes as I can with, say, my engineering team about memory constraints with,
That's
shipping.
true. Engineers. For every engineers, there's true and false. There's fact or fiction. And if you're an engineer, you have to deal in truths. Otherwise, the bridge will fall down. There's just no middle ground. And yet people, I think we can't really blame politicians for lying to us because we beg them to lie to us. We want them to lie to us. And if you're a politician, and I'd be very interested, Brianna, in what ends up happening, there is intense pressure, I'm sure, to misrepresent or at least to oversimplify the challenges.
Oversimplify hugely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to take a break. You're watching This Week in Tech with a great panel, a very philosophical panel. I like it. Larry Magid from CBS News Radio and ConnectSafely.org. Phil Libin, founder of Evernote. He's now running a AI incubator. No, what's the word you used?
Studio. We're
Studio.
an AI studio.
I like it. All turtles. Should people who have an AI idea come to you and say, I want to, what would you offer them?
I really don't need more people with AI.
Go away.
Yeah.
You'd say, go talk to Google, all-turtles.com to find out what.
And by the way, when you
he's up
Google
to.
all turtles, in addition to getting a link to your site, you see a bunch of pretty turtles on the top
It's
of
a
the
lot
screen.
of good. There's like a turtle sanctuary that someone runs.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Wait, are turtles the best animal ever?
They're protectionists, though.
Are you a turtle lover? Is that where? I know it comes from, it's
Personal
turtles all the
question.
way down. I know that. But who doesn't love turtles?
I do like turtles. Yeah.
There's something about them.
Yeah.
They know when to pull their head in. Also with us, Brianna Wu. She is a Space Cat gal. She founded Giant Space Cat Game Studio and is running, as you probably gathered, running for Congress. BriannaWu2018.com.
Someone pointed out the pandas are the best. I think they're right.
Pandas are pretty good.
Pandas are the best. Yeah.
Can't knock the panda.
Yeah. Also hedgehogs.
They got bad breath, though, because all they do is eat eucalyptus all day. It's very stinky. Actually, no, is that the koala? Maybe that's the koala.
Pandas
eat
like
bamboo.
Bamboo.
Have you ever held a koala?
No.
Man, they're potent. I'm not kidding you. They're very aromatic. Maybe would be the right word for that. All right. We had a great week this week on Twit, and we've created a special, enjoyable, minute-long video to celebrate it. Watch.
Previously on Twit.
Normally it would be with Steve Gibson, but I don't. Somebody else is sitting in for Steve.
Not change my voice at all.
There is something a little different. We're going to call you Babyface from now on.
Tech News Today.
So, Micah, you recently wrote about your favorite Amazon Echo skills or the best Amazon Echo skills.
The Tide stain remover skill. I can ask how to basically get rid of that stain.
Echo, open Tide.
What type of stain would you like to remove?
Blood.
Oh no, a blood stain. Let's clean that up.
Okay, so do you think now I'm put on this list? Like she's removing blood from stuff?
This Week in Google.
ASMR, the internet subculture of sounds that feel good, is going mainstream.
If I talked like this, in a very soothing way, I'd like to welcome you to This Week in Low Irish Talking Twillet.
Twit, the happiest place on earth.
I have an idea.
What?
Let's counter this with the shouting show. Let's shout everything we say.
There's a few shows based on that, I think, actually.
Really? I think so.
Our show today brought to you by WordPress.com. I'm a WordPress fanatic for years. I set up my first WordPress site on my own server, mind you, in the 2000s. And ran it for a long time. I found that it was a lot of work to keep my WordPress site running. That's when I went to WordPress.com. Let them do the hosting. Let them do the updates. And man, I love it. WordPress.com runs the same software. Some of the same guys who gave you WordPress, which runs 28% of all the websites in the world. In fact, WordPress, the WordPress.com VIP program has some of the best publications in the world. Quartz is built on WordPress. It's really amazing what you can do with WordPress. And if you're a business and you don't have a website, Do you really want Yelp to be the first thing people find when they Google your company's name? I don't think so. I think it's a bad idea. That's why you ought to make your own website. And I know why you didn't, because you don't want to be a webmaster. You don't want to get in all that. But this is easy. All you do is you go to WordPress.com, pick a template, hundreds of designs to choose from, and start typing. You'll get built-in search engine optimization. You'll get social sharing. The WordPress.com community is vast. You'll get a lot of favorites and likes from there and a lot of publicity. Plus, of course, expert-friendly support available 7 days a week. They are the best. See why 28% of all the websites in the world won on WordPress, the web's most popular and most powerful site-building platform. You go visit my site, leolaporte.com. I'm not a WordPress master or anything, but I love it.
100% of my sites run on WordPress.
Really?
All of my sites are on WordPress.
It's so easy.
It's so powerful,
and the thing of it's been around for so long. It's such a standard that the desktop tools that are available, the support, the programmers and the coders and the designers that can work with WordPress. It's a wonderful group of people. WordPress.com. Actually, we got a deal for you. If you go to WordPress.com/twit, you can get 15% off your brand new website. That's a very good deal. 15% off. All you have to do is go to WordPress.com/twit. We are really happy to have WordPress as a sponsor. WordPress.com/twit. Oh, there's so many stories today, and you guys are so great. I feel like I should give only the heavy-duty, challenging stories to you. So let's talk about Uber's new CEO, shall we?
Sure.
This was something we were actually last week. If you watched Twit, we knew the board was meeting. We knew the candidates were Jeff Immelt, former CEO of GE, Meg Whitman, current CEO, right, of HP, former CEO of eBay.
Enterprise, I think.
HP Enterprise. And a third, according to Kara Swisher, unnamed source. Well, guess who won? The third unnamed CEO, who turns out to be, I think by all accounts, exactly the right person for the job. His name is Dara Khosrowshahi. He was at Expedia, and if you read Ben Thompson's really excellent analysis on Stratechery, what he did at Expedia, which is essentially turn the company around from the ground up, not just adding a coat of paint on it, but really redesigning its business model. Do you have any experience of Dara? Do you know Dara, Phil?
I do know Dara, yeah. Not super well, but I've met him a few times.
What do you think?
I think he's great. I think he's a really good candidate. I'm hopeful that I think Uber is one of the most important companies in the world, and I'm hoping that this means that things turn around for them. We also know Travis, so just in all fairness, I know both of them.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lawsuit still going on, and there's all. I mean, it's still kind of a mess.
Yeah.
Some people were blaming the board at Uber. Now you've dealt with a board. Tell us first of all a little bit about the responsibility of a board of directors for a company, not a public company, but a soon-to-be public company like Uber, and certainly a unicorn like Uber. What is their job?
The responsibility doesn't really change that much if you're private or public. It's
okay.
To oversee the governance of the company, to make sure that
you boss the boss.
You decide who the boss should be.
Yeah,
I think ultimately the only real job of the board is to figure out who's running the company. Everything else is sort of...
You advise the CEO?
That's sort of a secondary thing. So I think the first thing is you decide who the CEO should be, and then as a secondary thing, you advise to the extent that's necessary.
You don't control. One of the things Khosrowshahi did apparently in his deck that he presented the board with was said, "Don't call me, I'll call you." The sense I got was, don't tell me what to do. If I need your advice, I'll ask.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good general CEO advice. You should keep your board busy. You should give them work to do. If you don't keep your board busy, they will try to figure out how to be helpful.
It's a tough board because you've got some big institutional investors like Benchmark. You've got some kind of activist investors, right? Who are kind of Benchmark said Travis has got to go for one thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get in the middle of any of that. I know most of the people involved, and they're for the most part all good people. It's a super complicated company. I mean, one thing we should point out is like the Uber situation right now is probably the most Game of Thrones like board dynamic that exists.
There you go.
It's like this is not like what normal boards or companies are like.
at all.
No, not at all. But like Uber is a fundamentally important company.
So you said a couple of things, and so why is Uber a fundamentally important company? It's just a ride-sharing company. It's a replacement for taxis. What makes it so important?
I think it ushered in, to a large extent, the gig economy, which is probably the most important economic force for the next couple of decades. I think it's more influential to changing what the idea of car ownership should be than even Tesla. I basically think like the two most important companies in the world right now are Amazon and Uber in terms of their ability to like influence the lives of billions of people. If for good or bad. And I think more on balance good, but I'm an optimist.
So, all right, if it's that important and it's that challenging, if it's a Game of Thrones board, what does Dara need to do as he moves into leadership there?
Just, run the business. I mean, I'm not going to give Dara advice. That's
focus on the business?
Yeah, focus on the business, make sure that the
should he replace
the ethics
the board?
Are real.
Does he need to bring in a new board?
Well, that's not usually up to the CEO. That's up to the shareholders that elect the board.
But he could go to the shareholders and say...
He could. I think he should probably get that figured out before he accepts. Just to sort of Uber needs to minimize drama for the next couple of years, if at all possible.
Supposedly that was.
I have to give you a little bit of pushback on that. Like what Susan Fowler wrote about wasn't drama, and she really brought some extremely concerning allegations forward about that culture, and I just don't want us to roller skate past that. And she is. Women in tech have groups where women in tech talk honestly about what companies to go to and what companies to avoid. And from everything I personally have heard, Uber is a fundamentally, I'm trying to think of the right word, a fundamentally damaged place for women to go work. I feel like I need to say that. But the gender issue aside and the employment issue aside, to me, I think Uber's longest term challenge is the fact that, riders only pay for a fraction of what a rideshare actually costs. And the rest of it is, venture capital. I'm very much for this model. I think it's much more convenient for consumer, but I don't see how it's sustainable, 10 years from now. I don't know how you recoup these costs enough, even if you, go to an automatic, AI model for driving.
Yeah, and I don't want to. When I say that I think Uber is one of the most important companies in the world, I don't at all mean that it's a very good company. That's a different thing to say. And there's been tremendous problems at Uber that I think are very serious. I know a lot of people there at every level, and it is both a great place and in many ways a terrible place, and it's done terrible things.
It's not merely the sexism; it's also the God mode. Some of the illegalities. They're now being accused of bribing officials in other countries. There's a violation of U.S. law. I mean, there's a lot of problems.
There's a lot of problems. It's a difficult culture. Dara really needs to, as much as possible, shine as much sunlight as possible onto it, get it all out in the open.
But that's what you mean by get rid of the drama, which is...
Yeah, I'm not trying to paper over it at all. There's fundamental issues that need to be tackled.
Yeah.
But I think that's worth tackling. The question is, is Uber worth saving? And I think it absolutely is. But it's a difficult job to do it.
So if we just look at if we backseat all those other issues, which are not insignificant and enough to bring a better company to its knees, there is, it strikes me, a fundamental financial challenge, which is Uber lost $3 billion last year. It's on track to lose the same amount this year. That's a lot of money to lose. They, in order to become profitable, need to somehow make more money on the rides. One thought, when you mentioned it, of course, Brianna, is replace the drivers with automated vehicles, but that seems to me a long way off. How much runway does a company like Uber have? And can it go back to its investors who have now valued it at $70 billion and say, hey, we'd like to be worth a little more? Can they get more money out of these guys?
Well, they don't need to be worth more to get more money.
Okay, but they need to get more money, right?
They'll need to get more money, yeah.
They don't have enough. I don't know what their runway is, but it can't be more than a few years. We're more than a few years off from self-driving, from driverless vehicles.
I don't think they're looking necessarily for self-driving to be the only way they become self-sustainable.
What else can they do?
Hey, look, when Uber was getting started, I remember the early investor meetings, and I remember investors saying, well, Yeah, like, okay, so let's say they become the world's largest, taxi company, and they own 10% of the taxi market. Well, what would it be worth?
Not 70 billion, I'm guessing.
But I also remember Travis saying, we're not going to own 10% of the taxi market. We're going to own 10,000% of the taxi market.
Oh, interesting.
And that's
we're
what
going to replace car ownership with, and we were just talking about that. It's cheaper to go buy Uber than to have a car. On the other hand, that's because Uber subsidizes 59% of the ride.
Right. So the question is, how long are investors willing to subsidize it?
Right.
And that's based entirely on how good is their story for long-term fundamental profitability. And I don't know. I haven't seen the decks.
Well, the other question is, how much are consumers willing to pay to ride Uber? So I take Uber to places that I would never have taken a taxi. It's like $125 to take a taxi from my house to SFO. I wouldn't do it. I'll take an Uber for $30-$40.
I would not be living in San Francisco if it wasn't for Uber.
Right. But what if
Uber had you can say thank you, Uber, for giving all of us a $3 billion subsidy.
Right, that's the problem.
That's not a business. We love them.
What if my trip to the airport became $75 and now I'm going to be taking Super Shuttle instead? Or
it's not a business.
Drive me?
It is a business. It's infrastructure, right? It's in the same way that like airports don't get paid off in the first 2 or 3 years, and neither do like highways, and neither do high-speed rails, and neither will Hyperloop One, and neither will SpaceX. Like Uber and Lyft and others are making fundamental infrastructure, and the payback period on those is long.
So wait a minute, the infrastructure as opposed to paying the drivers? I mean, airports are huge, right? There's a lot of concrete that goes into airports and land.
On-demand, like cars as a service, is fundamental infrastructure.
But Uber doesn't own
them.
Uber doesn't, right now, under the current model with drivers, Uber doesn't own the cars. The drivers own the cars.
The concept of ownership, I think, is also, like companies, increasingly archaic and gets sliced and diced in different ways.
So what's the path to profit? It's a vastly increased market, basically.
It's a big market.
You're going to make it up in volume.
Losing money on every sale and make it up in volume.
I mean, it's charging people slightly more than it costs to sell your product. The question is when.
That's a lot more.
That's the question. And will people pay slightly more than it costs to sell the product?
And I'm not saying that Uber stock is a good buy at this point. I'm not saying that it's not. That's like I honestly don't know.
It has, according to the New York Times, $6.6 billion in cash. At the run rate right now, that's a couple of years, maybe 3 years. That's the runway. That's a pretty quick turnaround unless they get more cash. And already many investors are saying it's not worth what they paid for it.
And how's Lyft doing? Does anybody have the data on Lyft?
Well, Lyft seems to be fumbling a massively great opportunity. I don't know why Lyft isn't jumping on this one all over the place. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Brianna. I cut you off.
No. I was just going to say, I had a meeting today. Boston has some of the worst public transportation systems in the United States. The
Better than San Francisco.
Laughing stock. And San Francisco, which is doing the same thing I'm about to say, which is working with partners like Uber and Lyft to subsidize the fact that we can't build our own infrastructure there. So maybe long term, the Department of Transportation pays X number of dollars to keep, Amtrak running and the T running, maybe the answer there is there's a public component going to these private companies. I think that's easily arguable. But, the fact is, I travel all over this country because I speak a lot. And, what I hear, if you want to know what an area is going through, you talk to the Uber drivers out there because they're the ones trying to make a living doing it. And, what I hear from people is they're already not really making enough to make that job worth it. And, I suspect that as they're trying to recoup these losses, it is going to come at the expense of their workforce. And that really concerns me.
But you would say, it sounds like, Phil, that it would be good for us if we could manage to make Uber survive. If Uber's going to bring us something of real value if it can manage to survive.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
I think that
we should be concerned about an Uber that's financially troubled.
Well, I don't have insight into the current economics or into the current business plan. I think there's some very smart people at Uber. I hope they can make it a sustainable business in the next few years.
Yeah.
And I think they're taking a long time frame to do it.
Brianna, I'm going to presume that you do not use Uber.
Yeah, I actually do because it's the best product.
See,
I get Keith.
So the delete Uber movement, I briefly deleted it. But like you, it's, you have more reason not to use it than I do. Like you, it's like, well, but this is the best solution.
I'd rather fix it than delete it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would rather fix it. And honestly, I don't think that punishing the people that, drive for that service is really helping anyone.
I love Uber.
So I get so much heat, though. Yeah, it's a great service,
like
but
Obamacare,
everything
we
I
don't
do,
want to repeal it. We want to fix it.
Okay, let's fix it like Obamacare.
Yeah.
Right. My mom recently, I've been trying to get my mom to use Uber. I set it up for her. She's 84. She doesn't drive.
How does she
And
use
I
it?
set it up for her in an app, and I put my credit card in it, and I said, it won't cost you anything. This is, she lives on the East Coast.
Does she have a smartphone?
She does. I gave her an iPhone.
Okay.
So, and she said, I'm not going to use it. They're rapists. And which is, I think, a very common misconception about Uber is that it's dangerous. I said, Mom, you take a cab. How is it more dangerous than that? She said, well, I hear things. And so I finally convinced her. She loved it. And she took it to the doctor, and she loved it. And I'm saying, just it's safe. It's okay. Keep using it. Tell me, she said they came in 5 minutes. He was very nice. He drove me right there.
When I have to take cabs now, when I'm traveling to places, usually in the U.S., where there's some places where you still, need to take cabs. Uber doesn't quite work. It's a shockingly worse experience, right?
Yeah.
And I
so
almost
funny.
forgot how much better of an experience
I
Uber
hate
is.
having to reach into my wallet at the end of the trip and deal with money.
All of it.
I mean, I'm happy to pay through the app, but I hate the process of having to pay for it.
Well, to be fair, many cabs now will let you pay
if you have the right. The problem
you have
is
to have their app.
When I got to Guadalajara, I wouldn't have had a app for whatever the cab company was there, but I had an Uber app.
Yeah.
But that's another, by the way, a smart move on Uber's part. As they become global, they become the choice for people who are traveling because you know them, you trust them, and
you don't even have to
you
speak
already
the
have
language.
The app. Right.
Even if you can't speak to the driver, the fact the driver knows where you're going through the app.
All right, I'm going to agree with you. Dara Khosrow, how do you say his name?
I don't know.
Okay. Dara Khosrowshahi, I think that's my best guess. Dara, save Uber. We need Uber. The world is a better place.
Like he's going to have the iconic first name. There's not that many other CEOs.
He's going to be
named
the
Dara.
Dara.
It's Dara.
It's like Elvis. We're going to call him Dara.
Yeah.
I actually took pride in spending many hours practicing his name just so I'd get it right.
Dara.
I still have
nailed it.
Dara.
I've
got
got Bezos wrong. It took me a while to get that one right.
All right, one more break. We're almost done. Great panel. Really fun today. Larry Magid. He's from CBS News Radio.
CBS News Radio.
News Radio.
Yep.
ConnectSafely.org, at Larry Magid on Twitter. Phil Libin, you know him from Evernote, one of the great companies of all time. He's now CEO of All Turtles at all-turtles.com. Do you have a Twitter handle? Do you use the Twitter?
I do. I'm at plibin.
Plibin. Make sure you use that. And do you speak Russian anymore, or did you forget all your Russian?
I do speak Russian.
Do you have occasion to speak it, or is it just in your head?
I speak Russian mostly to my parents.
Okay.
About a very
Are they still in
constrained
Russia, or
set
are
of
they in the U.S.?
No, they're in New York.
New York, yeah.
For past 30-something years, yeah.
So you have a child's grasp of the language.
Yeah, I speak Russian. I was 8 years old when we came to this country, and so I still speak Russian like a very polite, well-mannered 8-year-old boy.
What a great way to speak a language. I love it. Brianna Wu is also
that's
here.
how my husband speaks Chinese, the exact same way. Like he's as American as you get, but he's barely remembers it.
Co-founder of Giant Space Cat. She's Space Cat Gal on the Twitter. And don't forget, she's running for Congress in the Massachusetts 8th. Brianna Wu, 2018.com. Our show today brought to you by My Mattress. Ooh. And there's a new mattress.
Oh.
Ooh. Casper time. You have a Casper? I heard it. Ooh.
I have a Casper pillow.
They sponsor Rocket. That's just
we
amazing.
love Casper. You guys, Simone does such a good job with her funny voices and... She's quite a character. Anyway, yes, that's right. You guys love your Caspers. The Casper team, I love it, is a bunch of engineering nerds, and that's what's really cool about them. So they took all the research but they built hundreds of prototypes trying to find a perfect mattress. Their supposition was, and I kind of agree with this, what you want is something that gives so that your bony parts sink in, but is firm so that your back doesn't hurt in the morning. It's got to give you. It's an impossible dream. An impossible dream. A supple, pressure relieving mattress that gives you firm support. But they did it. I don't know how they did it. They did it. And with its breathable open cell layer, it is for on a hot night like last night. Man, I was so glad. It just breathes. It's cool.
Do you have the older one or the new model?
I have the old one, but they're sending us, and I can't wait to try it. This is the new one.
Yeah.
By the way, Fast Company's most innovative brand of 2017. That means they don't sit on their laurels. They might sit on the bed, but they don't sit on their laurels. They introduced the Casper Wave mattress.
What are laurels?
I think it's the laurel leaves that the victors in. Why would you sit on? It would hurt.
Yeah.
Because don't rest on your laurels.
Oh, right.
Rest on your laurels.
So like once
so
you've
it's not
earned
literally sitting.
Got it.
But you can rest on your Casper. In fact, it's the best rest you've ever had. And the new Casper Wave mattress, I haven't tried it. I'm getting one. It features, they say, natural geometry support system, a new top layer. But you get your choice. They still offer the Casper Classic, I'm going to call it, which is, I don't know, it's pretty close to perfect. Now, one of the things you may say is, well, I'm not going to try this I'm not going to buy this unless I can try it. Well, you can, because when you buy a Casper mattress, you have 100 nights to return it. That's a 100-day trial period. So if at any time in the first 100 nights you say, yeah, it's nice, but I don't like it, call them. They will come get it. They literally come and get it, take it out of your house, give you every penny back. No risk to you. But I don't think this is going to happen. I think you're going to really.
What do you do with your old mattress?
Well, if you are at all unsure about your Casper, I'd keep your old mattress in the garage or something, because then you could just go back to it. I didn't. I said take the old
mattress. I mean, I got a.
Goodwill comes and they takes it.
Goodwill comes. Okay.
Oh, of course.
All right.
Yeah, you donate it. One of the things about the Casper, when it comes, it does come in a very compact box. You open it up and it goes. And this is another thing. I have had other mattresses that smell for weeks. They smell like rubber for weeks. I don't know how they do it. Casper has some, odor extraction technology, because there's no odor at all. You sleep on it immediately, and it's wonderful. If you want to know more, dive into the science behind the perfect mattress and get $50 towards any mattress purchase by going to casper.com/twit. Use the promo code TWIT. Terms and conditions apply. Casper.com/twit. Technology you can feel.
The real innovation, I think, the product is great. The real innovation is mattresses. Mattresses as a business used to be really like predatory and slimy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they cleaned it up. And they were the first ones to see that, like, wow, why does buying a mattress feel like you're constantly getting ripped off?
That's a really good point. I mean, not to mention the insane
markup. I heard about that. Apparently, there's mattresses you can pay literally $98,000 for. And the tests show that they're not. Well, no, there are. Yeah. And it turns out that there isn't a big difference.
You think you're getting a better night.
It's also like it was dishonest. It was, it's
intense markup.
A lot of it is what Tesla did with buying cars.
Yeah, eliminate the
like
deal.
This idea that, like, I've been calling it beneficence. The idea that, like, any business you run, you should run beneficently, which means you make every single decision based on solely what's in the best interest of the end user, of the customer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it that way, there's so many industries that deserve to be, like, completely destroyed and rewritten.
The taxi industry was a good start, right?
Taxi industry was a good start, but like all of financial services.
Oh yeah.
Like all of financial services.
We're seeing that happening, aren't we? With the robo.
All of insurance, all of financial services.
Yep.
Like
Insurance has yet to be disintermediated.
Well, some are doing really well. There's a lot of companies.
Health insurance is like Oscar that's doing it.
Oscar, Oscar is one of our investments at General Catalyst, and they're definitely.
I like
doing
Oscar
this.
a lot. Yeah.
There's several good. Lemonade is another one. This idea that you take industries that were fundamentally predatory because they made money, their business model was they're going to take advantage of asymmetries of information to screw their customers.
Right. Mm-hmm. And now, what the internet is all about fundamentally is leveling the playing field of information.
Like, this is what I'm saying about the world being fundamentally better. Like,
I agree.
You get rid of informational asymmetries, and now you can destroy all of the predatory businesses and replace them with ones that actually are beneficent.
That's interesting.
Huge. Yeah. Casper just did that for mattresses, which like who knew that mattresses were this like weird, slimy, predatory business?
Right.
But they were, and now it's not just Casper. Now
there's a dozen of these.
But some of them are from the big mattress brands that are like desperately trying to
that's interesting. Of course it is, right?
Everything needs to go this way.
The first thing you do.
Florists need to.
Well, look at the low cost cellular companies. A lot of them are owned by the Verizons and the Sprints and the AT&Ts. I mean, that's common. But
there should be no business
left. Becomes, how many jobs will we lose if we put all mattress stores out of business, and should we care? Or will those jobs be replaced?
So, I I think if you try to protect existing jobs, you wind up making all sorts of weird decisions. I think this is more of a generational thing.
You get clean coal.
Well, I think this is the generation, and I think this is where both parties really screw this conversation up. It's really about generational change. Like, I think the government.
This is an example of something, though, that if you're a politician, you do not want to say out loud to your constituency.
Yeah, I think
because
Hillary Clinton
it's
did
a
and got in
hard
trouble.
truth. It's true, but it's a hard truth.
Hillary Clinton got in trouble for talking about.
Is there a
the
way
coal
to
industry.
say it that doesn't sound scary?
Yeah, there is, and it's not lying to the voters like Hillary did, and it's not lying to the voters like Trump did, right? Because they knew that both sides were lying to them, and given that both sides are lying to them, they preferred the lie that was less condescending,
right?
Which is we're going to get your jobs back.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So the 45-year-old coal workers are not going to get retrained installing solar panels, which was the Democratic line. That's not going to happen.
Right.
They're also not getting their jobs back. That's not going to happen. But if those are the only two choices, they're just going to take the lie that feels less condescending to them. The truth is, it's really about their kids. The government has enough money to support. If you're 45 and you've been a coal miner in any industry, we should just be able to support you in your current lifestyle until you would have retired. But none of your kids will be coal miners. Like, that's the truth of it. Right? The truth of it. This is a generational problem, not a problem within the lifetime of the middle-aged people currently employed. No one said that, but I think you can do that with charisma and truthfulness and get elected.
Maybe
but no one did.
But that's what I was saying, where we're begging them to lie to us because
as somebody who's actually considerably older
truth.
than 45 and still works and loves working and has no intention of retiring, even though I could afford to. It's not simply about losing money. It's also about losing your sense of being useful.
Who you are.
You need the meaning.
The future of work.
Miner or journalist doesn't matter.
The future of work is the future of meaning. Like the hardest question right now is how do we give meaning at scale? There's some ideas about that, but that's a big one because it's not like universal basic income and all of that stuff. It's solving the easy problem. Like that's just math. It's really what is the future of meaning. But in terms of what can you tell electors, voters, you tell them the truth. You tell them like this is about your kids.
It would be such a bold thing and I've always wanted to see this, a candidate to do that and see what happens. Maybe you just die immediately. Brianna, I think you're going to do that.
You would do great.
Maybe I think you might.
You would.
I agree with everything you're saying. I do want to point out, here on the show, like Leo, you've got a Tesla. We've got two Tesla owners, somebody that doesn't even drive, and somebody that's looking at buying a Porsche Cayman, right? Like we come into this conversation.
Are we
with
1%ers?
I'm a Prius owner who's may buy a Tesla.
I just want to tell you, like I talk to people literally every day that are out there. They're really struggling to get by. So I agree with your points. I just want to acknowledge that it's a lot easier for us to talk about it theoretically than it is to really be like opening up a room of your house on the weekend to Airbnb so you can afford to pay your mortgage. I agree. We've got to look at universal basic income, but you're so right. Like at the base of it, humans need meaning in our lives. Like we want to work in like a future where more of us can be journalists, where more of us can be musicians, where more of us can make things. That's really, really exciting to me. But I think you're really right that it's going to look different 20 years from now.
I think there's a sense of treating people with agency, which most politicians just haven't done, have no experience in doing. Yeah. A friend of mine runs this company. I think it's called Groups. It's a series of heroin addiction, opioid addiction centers. She's opened up like 50 of them. They've got this new process that makes it much more efficient. And she was telling me this idea. A woman named Joy Sun. She was telling me this idea a couple of years ago when she was just getting started. She's like, "Yeah, I'm going to run these centers, and they're meant to be sustainable, and they're for profit. They're not connected to insurance, and we've got this new way to treat opioid addiction, which is really effective." And I said, "Well, who's going to pay you?" And she said, "Well, the heroin addicts are going to pay us." I was like, "Really? You're going to get money from heroin addicts? That seems like a bad idea." And she looked at me and she said, "They've got money for heroin. They've got money for heroin treatment."
Oh, interesting.
Like, you're just assuming that these are all people that are losers that have no agency, but that's not true. There's some of them are, but there's many of them that actually have the motivation they're not stupid. They have the motivation to actually change something, and they've got the money to buy heroin. Therefore, they have the money to buy heroin treatment. And she's just opened up 50 of these centers, and it's like super effective. So like this idea that like people need to be lied to because they have no agency because they're children.
Yeah, I wonder if one is not the right effective idea. If they have skin in the game. I mean, if they're paying for the service.
I think someone talking to the voters who have jobs that they're struggling and just being honest with them. Like I think that's literally
I'd love to see
never
somebody
been tried.
try it. I'm not convinced that you're right that it would work because
it would totally work.
I think a lot of it's an interesting idea. Maybe Phil should run for office.
Can't be president.
I can't be president. And honestly, Congress is beneath me. So
it's that attitude that's going to keep the good people out of government. Now,
Exactly.
you gotta, you gotta dig in.
I'll just be more selective about which Congress people I buy.
Oh, Lord. I feel like there might be some truth in that. I'm not going to dig any deeper.
It's funny because it's true.
We could talk about Juicero, but I think we should just wrap this up. Larry Maggot, great to have you. Really
Good to
appreciate
be here,
it.
Leo. Well, this was actually, I love all your twits, but this was one of the funnest ones I've been on. I really enjoyed it.
I think sometimes you get a panel together and you get some topics that we can.
I want to hang out with these guys.
I know.
Yeah.
That's really all Twit ever was meant to be, is just a hangout, a place where you'd be like the fourth person at the table, sitting here with us, or fifth person at the table.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larry, for being here.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate
Always a
it.
pleasure.
ConnectSafely.org if you want to know more about protecting people, your kids and others online.
By the way, we're about to come out with next week our LGBT cyberbullying guide, which is a huge issue.
Oh.
So we're finally
How not to be bullied.
How not to be bullied, and what to do if you are bullied, or your kids are bullied, or your students are bullied.
Oh, that sounds great. And is that'll be available online?
Yeah, from ConnectSafely.org sometime next week, end of the week, and it's all about. It's designed not just for parents and teachers, but also for LGBT youth themselves, some of the strategies they can use. And obviously, I didn't write it. I brought in an expert who is himself an LGBT activist and an author.
It's great that you're doing all of this. ConnectSafely.org. That's
Very pleased to be able to do that.
Phil Libin, it's a pleasure. Your insights and brilliance are without equal. I am going to give you some laurels so you can sit on them tonight. Really, really a pleasure to have you. As always, Phil, we know from Evernote, but he is now at all-turtles.com, an AI studio, startup studio. And don't bother writing him. He's full up.
Thank you for inviting me back.
No room at the end. You're always welcome. It's great to have you.
Same for
you.
him if he doesn't answer his email.
Yeah, well, he's got 109,000 emails in his inbox. So. Would you answer them with that many?
109,000 unread. Who knows?
Unread.
Total.
Wow. Yeah. Don't email them.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But you can do one thing. You can vote for Brianna Wu if you're in Massachusetts 8th. When's the primary?
Yeah.
It's not soon, but.
So the guy I'm running against just really never, even so rarely had a primary challenger. The Democratic Party will have to schedule it, but we assume
they haven't scheduled it.
Who is the incumbent?
No, yeah. His name is Stephen Lynch. So he's kind of old school Massachusetts politician.
Yeah.
So just think of that stereotype.
Good luck.
So how many months or
thank you very
years
much.
is your campaign? How long do you take to run for Congress?
So for me, when I started my game studio, it took me honestly about a year to figure out what I was doing. So, we announced this year, and it's just been trying to figure out how do you build an infrastructure? How do you hire a team? How do you go out there and make inroads with the local party? So, for me, it's just been nonstop since January.
I like this slogan. It's time for a bolder Democratic Party. I kind of agree with you on that.
We do. We need some people that'll fight. Not afraid to throw a punch.
At Space Cat Gal on the Twitter, and of course, BriannaWu2018.com. Hey, thank you all for being here. We had a great audience from all over the world, from the UK, from Mexico, from Sebastopol, from all over the world. And it's so great to have you all here. If you'd like to be in our live studio audience, we welcome you. All you have to do is email tickets@twit.tv. We'll put a chair out for you. We have pretty good size space. We have enough room for about 20 or 30 people, and I don't think we've ever run out of space, but do email us just to make sure. You can also watch live online at twit.tv/live. We have YouTube Live, we have Twitch, we have Ustream. We also have many audio streams, so you can listen live. In fact, if you have an Echo, people ask me a lot, can I listen on Echo? Absolutely. If you want to listen to the audio, just say to your Echo, listen to Twit Live. If you want to do the live stream, listen to Twit Live on TuneIn. That's the key word, TuneIn, because it's TuneIn Internet Radio that has at least that stream. But you can also say listen to Twit on TuneIn, or listen to MacBreak Weekly on TuneIn, and you'll hear the current podcast.
Are you going to do a video version for the show?
In fact, it's already there. You can watch on the show, and that's via YouTube. So you would say, if you have an Echo show with a screen, watch Twit Live on YouTube,
cool.
or watch Twit on YouTube, or watch This Week in Tech on YouTube, or watch MacBreak Weekly on YouTube, and it will pop up. It's awesome. You can watch it. You can watch it live, or you can watch the podcast.
Great.
That's the point. We do this live every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 UTC. But many people can't be here and be in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. So we do make on-demand versions of everything available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can get audio or video. You can even download it from twit.tv, our website. My suggestion, my request, in fact, is if you've got a favorite podcast client, an app on your phone or whatever, Stitcher, Slacker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, iTunes, whatever it is you use, subscribe. Almost all of them will offer a way for you to subscribe, which means you'll get every episode automatically. And that it helps us. It kind of smooths out the highs and lows so we can predict with some reliability how many people are going to be listening. So if you would, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. And that way you don't miss anything. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Another Twit is in the can. Bye-bye. Happy Labor Day, everybody.